Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It is 7:01. I'm Mike Graham. It is the 1st of July, Wednesday, the 1st of July. Truth Junkie says, good morning from the Falkland Islands. It's 3 a.m. here. A very good morning to you, Truth Junkie. We like the Falkland Islands. We're going to come down and see you. We're going to come and do a show from there, aren't we, Pooch?
Yeah, we are.
That's very much in the plans. A couple of other bits of what you might call housekeeping, as we used to say. We keep getting people asking us about Russell Quirk. What happens to Russell doing the 10 a.m. show, says Katie English. We've got Kelvin McKenzie in at the moment doing it. And Russell will be back. Russell at the moment is just wrestling with a few, shall we say, issues with his scheduling because he's got a new job working for the council in Essex. So he's having to figure out what would be a best time for him to do a show. But he will definitely be back. And obviously we'll still be talking to him every week as he does the newspaper review for us. Normally on a Tuesday, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
So hopefully he'll be back on Tuesday. Hi, Mike. Good morning, says Cindy. Morning, Cindy. Good morning to all of you.
I missed William Yarwood yesterday.
William Yarwood yesterday was absolutely phenomenal.
Really?
I don't know where he's been. I don't know what he's been doing, but it's almost as like he's been to Switzerland and had some kind of elixir of life given to him. He was so funny. He was really energetic, and he was absolutely giving it large to old Andy Burnham, Angry Burnham, the world's most stupid professional northerner, absolutely ridiculous. Ellie Hodges was here. She was absolutely in fits laughing at what he was saying because he was extraordinarily funny. He said he can't wait to get back in and get back to the normal work that he's been doing. Let me know when you come, mate. It would be nice to meet you, says True Chunky. Well, I'm assuming if you go to the Falkland Islands, you meet everybody, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
I mean, you don't. It's not possible to go to the Falkland Islands and not meet everyone, is it?
No, exactly.
I mean, I can't imagine if you lived in the Falkland Islands, you'd walk around going, do you see that house over there? I've never met the people living there because it's not very big, is it? I know there's a couple of islands, aren't there? Yeah. There's more than one island.
No trees.
No trees, like Iceland.
Yeah. Iceland
doesn't have any trees. I went to Iceland once. Actually, I went to Iceland more than once, but when I lived in Scotland, I used to fly to America with Iceland Air, and they used to stop off in Keflavik, which was really cool because you would get off the plane and you would have a couple of hours there, and you'd go to a place called the Blue Lagoon. You ever been there?
No.
Really fantastic. It's an open air kind of spa, hot springs type scenario, and it was snowing when I was there, but you basically come out in your swimming trunks. You walk out in this really freezing cold air, and you get into this really hot water. Lovely.
Did you suffer from the coldness scenario that men suffer from?
Not particularly, no. No, I was a lot younger then, so there wasn't an issue. But no, in fact, my son Oliver was a baby, and we took him in for the so he was. There's a great picture of me holding the baby in the water, which was great. William was trying to impress Ellie, says Cookie Boy. You could hear her laughing. Well. And do you know what he said? Do you know what he said, which had me going? Kelvin is doing a great job on the 10 a.m. show, says Jacqueline. He said that his house was being redecorated, right? Which is why he had to not be around. So I can only assume that...
Couldn't he just sleep in a tent in the garden?
Or in Tented City down Park Laneway. I can only assume that they had to sort of redo the paintwork or something. I can't imagine why that would be.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Maybe people could suggest possibilities. We've got a poll going, which may not be ready yet, but it's going to be about the football, because England are playing football tonight. So we've got the usual jingoistic nonsense in the newspapers, not least in The Sun, with a picture of Harry Kane trying to look hard. And I know he probably is, because he's a professional athlete, but we are the lions that roar, it says. Which is a bit sort of naff, really, isn't it? It's a bit sort of naff. He says here, Harry Kane today leads the three lions against DR Congo, or as Mark Littlewood calls it, Dr. Congo, in England's first knockout match of the World Cup. As fans prepare for the do-or-die clash, they're urged to join a national debate about what it means to be English. Really? Dear England, playwright James Graham, no relation, has written a powerful message for the campaign, including the rousing words, "We are the lions that roar." Well, you have to really read the small print to get that from them. But here's the thing, right? What it means to be English, what it means to be British. We've got a situation in Oxfordshire, and we spoke to Stephen Barrett about this last week. He's here with us this morning. We're going to talk to him in a minute. Where if, despite the fact that you are in England, and it is an England campaign to win the World Cup, that you cannot fly an England flag in Oxfordshire because it's against the law now, apparently. Somebody actually went to the High Court to get that ruling made. But it's worse than that, right? Aside from the fact that there's now an Ebola case in Glasgow, and as I said on social media this morning, I can't imagine how that happened. How did somebody bring Ebola into Glasgow, do you think? Any guesses? But have a look at this, right? This is the first video we're going to play you today on the show, because it's obviously, yesterday we had the story from The Sun about the £250,000 houses that were being given away for free to migrants, right? And that was in Shropshire. This is, I think, from Berkshire, and this is Councillor Denise Gaines showing us around some luxury accommodation. Check this out.
Our offices. We used to have an office here for some of the social workers, but now, because it was redundant, we've actually turned it into some converted flats. These flats are amazingly finished out. They've got some beautiful carpets, they've got all fitted units, and 4 of them are actually 3-bedroom. So we've got 4 3-bedroom and 1 bedroom. These are going to be for both Afghan, Ukrainian. This is great for them because at the moment they're living in hostels and hotels, and we don't want that to happen in West Berkshire. So to get them into actually these sorts of accommodations, and such a lovely finish as well. It's beautiful. If you can look around, you can see the light in here. It's amazing. And we've got heat source pumps and actually proper cool radiators, heated radiators in the bathrooms, showers and baths. It's a really lovely finish. And we're going to have EV charging points outside for the car parking, which is, again, the latest innovations.
So it's really nice, isn't it, so if you're in West Berkshire, because you can have a nice flat there with all the trimmings, carpets, some lovely fitted kitchens, place to park your car as well, if you're from Afghanistan or Ukraine, where you can live for free.
Park your camel.
Park your camel. But seriously, what's going on? What on earth is going on? We said yesterday, all these people who are moving in to the £250,000 houses in Shropshire, right? A place called Stoke Heath, I think it was. They're not just getting a free flat, because they'll also get all the free goods that come with it, like a free fridge, you get a free washing machine, maybe a washer dryer, you get a free television. They'll be fitted out. You won't have to, they won't suddenly move in and go, oh, crikey, what are we going to do for furniture? No, they'll have all the furniture. You won't have to go to IKEA and spend any money. You won't have to go to, John Lewis or somewhere else, or even a second-hand junk shop to try and buy some chairs and tables so you can actually, have dinner. I wonder how many homeless veterans that says. Sorry, I was just...
Truth junkie, again.
Truth junkie again from Falklands, yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, people are going to say, well, we have to put them somewhere. Yeah, we do have to put them somewhere. How about on a plane, right? And send them back to wherever the hell they came from. That's what we should be doing. Let's talk to Stephen Barrett, who's been waiting patiently for me. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
It seems to be going from bad to worse,
Haircut,
Stephen. Nice looking hair, by the way. Have you finally cut your hair?
I may have been persuaded to cut my hair.
You're looking very handsome, if I may say so. I mean, it does suit you. Very nicely done. We'll come back to that. Yeah, after yesterday's news, £250,000 houses being given away for free. I thought I saw a line that came out of Parliament or Downing Street last night in which it said that we will not be giving new build houses to migrants, right? However, we now see that over in West Berkshire, they've got some very nice custom-made units which have got lovely views, very well appointed, apparently. This woman's like an estate agent, this councillor, telling us that Afghans and Ukrainians will be, Ukrainians, as George Galloway would call them, are being housed there. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And a lot of people in this country who hold positions of power and influence have very clearly lost their minds.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no other way to describe this. I mean, that lady, what on earth she thought she was doing? Why on earth we should give free luxury flats to foreign men for no reason? It just beggars belief. I mean, what on earth is the point of our history? What on earth is the point of society?
Yeah.
Why do we even bother? Why do we bother with anything then? If that's it, why don't we just go to another country and expect them to give us a luxury flat? Why don't we, let's all do that? We'll all just leave. We don't have to stay on this island. We're not rooted to it. We're not tied here. We'll just go somewhere and they'll give us a free
where should we go?
flat.
I quite fancy South Beach, Miami, which is very nice all the year round. It's got a lovely boulevard there, Collins Avenue, where you can walk around, you just cross the road straight on the beach, a place to park your car maybe, some free furniture. Why not?
Well, I've always liked Dubai, so I'll just go there and get a free flat. I mean, that'll be great. It doesn't have to be at the top of the building, Mike, but maybe, a mid-level free flat.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Decent
the
view.
Dubai government will pay for my food and my clothes and give me some spending money because I'll need that. I mean, that's just basic. I mean, surely they'll see the logic of that, Mike. That's just my human rights. This is just insane. It's just insane. And basically the entire migration industry, which is huge, absolutely colossal, and it grows day by day. I mean, everything Shabana Mahmood does just wastes more money on the business of migration. It's a colossal, international industry now. It's got nothing to do with asylum. It's got nothing to do with genuine fear or threat, because these people, then they come here, they get given a free flat, and then they go back home on holiday. This is it's just absurd.
Yeah. Well, somebody posted, I think it was Migration Watch yesterday, and it kind of stood out for me because it's something that we don't often talk about. But Migration Watch put out a stat yesterday in which it said that something like 13,000 Brazilians have been given asylum in this country in recent years. And the question they were asking was, what are they running from in Brazil? There's no war there. There's no famine. There's no carnage going on. People might be getting their watches stolen, but I mean, they can get that here. The point is that, why are we giving asylum to people from Brazil when there's no reason for them to come here?
Well, those beaches in Rio de Janeiro can be very, very difficult.
Yes.
Those of us who don't have a beach-ready body automatically to hand need to be given a free flat and compensation. So, I mean, that's part of the reason that I will be fleeing to Dubai and demanding my free flat and my free clothes and my free spending money, because I think in many ways I feel heavily judged in Buckinghamshire. It's quite a difficult county to live in. It's got all sorts of expectations of me, some of which can be spun as infringing my human rights, probably somehow. And this entire thing is just a joke. It's a colossal joke. It's the migration. We just need to start talking about the immigration industry. Okay, this is an industry.
It is.
And everything around it is an industry. It's not merely the grifting. I mean, to be honest, the people I have most sympathy with are the grifting migrant men. I mean, they've basically gone, these people are bonkers, but, if they're going to give me free stuff, and that makes sense. They're the only ones who actually make any rational sense. The people who don't make any sense are the people like that mad councillor, the people who keep banging on about how we have some sort of moral duty to give people free flats and free housing, free hotels and free clothes and a free phone. I mean, just as though there's some sort of great moral duty to do that. The entire international migration system has to stop, because we're an island and we'll get full, and that's a reality that I think people on the left in particular don't want to recognize. I don't think they don't seem to want to.
They don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, I was having a conversation with a couple of youngish people yesterday about the fact that London has become, kind of a very, very foreign city. And I talk about it quite a lot. And they were like, well, what's wrong with that? And I went, well, there's quite a lot wrong with it, actually. It's always had foreign people in it, but now it's different because now it feels foreign. It doesn't feel like a London city. It doesn't feel like an English city. It feels like some kind of amorphous mass of kind of, teeming humans, most of whom are not from here, which I think is wrong.
Well, they called it multiculturalism, didn't they? But that was a lie, because they never respected our culture.
No.
And our cultures had to be sacrificed on the altar of this.
Right.
Import people from foreign places. As I say, absolutely huge amounts of respect actually for the men who travel on foot thousands of miles in order to get the free stuff that they don't deserve, but realize that we're too stupid to not give it to them. It's everybody else in the migration industry that we really need to pay attention to. It's the politicians who grift off this. It's my fellow lawyers who are heavily involved.
Oh my God!
In the migration industry, it's just ridiculous. And the idea of it growing, and then there'll be other people. Serco will benefit from this. Then there's the house. If you own HMOs, if you own hotels, you're grifting off the migration industry. and it's they don't seem to care about anything. And obviously what resonates most with the public, and because I talked to the Pink Ladies, and I think the Pink Ladies are something to be very, very proud of. They stand up for their community and for the safety of women and girls, which is of course desperately important. I wouldn't suggest that the people involved in the migration industry want the bad things to happen that happen to women and girls in particular as a result of these dangerous migrant men. I just think they see it as an acceptable collateral damage.
Yes, exactly.
That's how it feels to me.
Yes.
It's not like they want this to happen. They don't want people to be partially beheaded on the streets in Scotland.
Yeah.
They just see that as perfectly acceptable collateral damage. And Mike, it's not. You know, we are atrocity island in my eyes.
Yeah.
Every day there is a scandal. There's going to be one today, isn't there? Or if not today, it'll be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Something outrageous will happen because of a migrant man.
Yes.
And all you need to know is that the migration industry, the immigration industry, doesn't care. It's not necessarily evil. It's just completely heartless. It's completely soulless. It's just trying to make a buck. And it's making a lot of money out of this. This is a huge industry based upon this pathetic, unwillingness to have a border.
Yes.
Which we can have. I mean, I'm so fed up with this. I mean, it's like years ago I started saying that we could actually deport people to Rwanda. It's just bored of this now. We can have a border. Why aren't we?
Well, look at this guy who has been in the news the last couple of days, the rape gang character from Pakistan, I think he's from, who apparently cannot be deported. And we were talking about it this morning. Why cannot he be deported? What's that all about? How about, here's how you deport him. You go and put him in handcuffs, you put him on a plane, and you fly him back to Pakistan. That's how you deport him. The end.
Well, no, he needs to be lawfully deported. So what you do is you go to Parliament, you pass a bill and make it an act of Parliament that says he can be deported, and then you deport him. And that's our way. That's our way. We do things lawfully. We're a law-based...
But it can be done, in other words.
Of course it can. I mean, I'm so fed up with this, Mike. 6 years I've been banging on in the public about law. And every time, the question is, can we do this? Yes, you can. It is the only answer. There's almost nothing you can't do. There are very specific limits on what you can do lawfully, because there are very specific limits on what you can do in reality. So you can't pass a law reversing gravity. Okay, that we can't do. You can't pass a law saying that we can create wormholes through space. Okay, because we can't do that. But you can pass a law to do almost anything else. The limits on what we can do lawfully, which are used constantly to manipulate the public, because the public have been, brainwashed into believing that law is something like a sort of magic spell that can only. What they've tried to do, Mike, is to embed one philosophy, one political ideology, one way of doing things, and then wrap it up in law and say this has to be the one way of doing things forever. Well, if open borders is the one way of doing things forever, this country will cease to exist.
Well, looking at the law and the way that the law is interpreted and or changed by this government and many other governments before it, it would seem as though they don't literally know what they're doing, right? There's a piece on the front of the Times today which says, migrants who establish families while in Britain illegally will no longer be able to use their partners or children to avoid deportation. This is a pledge by Shabana Mahmood. But later on in the story, it actually admits that it's not clear whether this will have any effect on the more than 30,000 people who are currently here illegally with their families because they can't be deported. And it says that it's very likely that at least half of those who have been denied the right to remain will avoid deportation anyway. And you kind of go, well, exactly what are you saying here? So you're telling us that you're going to change the rules, but it won't have any effect, in other words.
Well, it won't have any effect, and she's not planning to leave the ECHR. So the human rights lawyers are still there. They're still in the background. So all this is a recipe for making more money for human rights lawyers. Because if she does anything to try and pretend that this is a law while not leaving the European Court of Human Rights, they will immediately run to the European Court of Human Rights. In fact, they'll run to domestic courts earlier. This whole thing is just a sham. So I had sympathy with Boris when he had the Rwanda 1 plan. I call it Rwanda 1. It was the first Rwanda scheme. Now, it was badly written and badly made as law, so it was always doomed. And very sadly, Rwanda 1, died in the Supreme Court. Lord Reed, who's our president of the Supreme Court and one of our finest actual proper lawyers. Well, there are very few proper lawyers in my mind left, but he's one of them, and I have deep and lasting respect for him. He very sadly had to kill Rwanda 1. Fine. You can say that's just incompetence. Okay, the government was just incompetent. It didn't know how to deport people to Rwanda properly. Fine. Rwanda then comes Rishi Sunak's Rwanda 2 scheme, which is what Robert Jenrick resigned from the Conservative Party over, quite rightly, because Rwanda 2 was equally doomed. But by the time of Rwanda 2, we all knew that. Anybody who's paying attention, if non-lawyers didn't know that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not telling you off, but any competent lawyer knew that the Rwanda 2 wouldn't work. So why the hell was it being proposed? And I see the same mischief, the same nonsense making in Shabana Mahmood. She wants to get these headlines. She wants to tell people things, but she must know that none of this is going to work. None of it's going to happen. So what is, and the more interesting thing to me, Mike, is that once you accept that, once you understand that the politicians are saying things that they know won't work within the legal system we currently have, they're not proposing to change the legal system that we currently have, so they must know it's never going to work.
Right.
Why are they just manipulating the public? I mean, this is just lying. This is just industrial scale lying. And that if that's what our politicians think being a politician is, then we're in a very bad state, because being a politician isn't necessarily, it can't just be lying and hoping for the best. This is no way to govern any country at any time, but it's certainly no way to govern our country in 2026, when we have the best educated population we've ever had, the most informed population we've ever had, the thanks to social media, the most able to directly contact and access people than has ever happened before. I wonder actually sometimes if the public know this, but you can reach almost anyone directly because of things like Twitter. I mean, it's incredible. Facebook, it's going to. There was a great playwright who wrote about 6 degrees of separation, saying that human beings are only ever 5 other people away from each other. So we're all connected. Well, I think we're now at maximum 1 degree of separation, because the maximum is like if you tweet at a politician, the most degree of separation you have is that they've got a junior employee who reads the tweet and then tells them what it says. Right. So that's maximum. We have the shortest distance between each other right now. So everybody needs to tell Shabana Mahmood that we know that she's lying.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely.
Well, because it's now become the rule of government, hasn't it? Lying is now these kind of de facto situation on a daily basis. Yesterday, and I'm going to play a little clip of him in a moment, Keir Starmer, who laughably still refers to himself as the Prime Minister, even though he resigned a week ago Monday, right? I mean, that's kind of where we are. But he came out yesterday with his new costed defence plan, which apparently isn't costed. Here's what he said.
Now, unlike previous governments, we have taken care to fully cost this plan, examining the defence budget line by line. And that is vital, because it's how you expose the necessary trade-offs and expose the arguments that just don't stack up. You have some people in this debate who underplay the threat and deny the need to prioritise defence and security. You also have those who say you can fund defence without making sacrifices in other areas of capital spending. And you have those arguing that we can just raise borrowing, put it all on the never-never. But let's be clear, defence bonds are just borrowing by another name. We've looked at this very carefully. But the fact is, doing this through borrowing would push interest rates higher at a time when £1 in every 10 already goes on paying debt interest. And this government has fought hard to bring the public finances under control. And it has paid off. helping to bring inflation and mortgage rates down. We should not sacrifice that now. Because this is the point that often gets missed. Strong public
It's
finances
complete
are a
and utter
fundamental
rubbish.
part of our
You didn't
strength.
speak.
in
Just
this
shut
world.
up. You have
Lose
not
control of
costed
them.
it. There's a
We're not just
£5 billion
poorer,
black
we're much
hole.
less
You have
secure.
not got the community under
Such
control,
funding to our
or
public
the business
services,
community, or the
favourite
financial community, or
And we
the
would be fundamentally
economy. You have it. Just get lost. Get rid of him,
More fractured
please.
as a society.
I can't take it anymore. I cannot take it anymore. He's literally saying one lie after another. Right? The whole plan that he announced yesterday. He spent about an hour talking yesterday. I couldn't believe it. Right? Let's be clear, I'm going to lie now. Yeah, it says red skies. You know, I got in the car yesterday after finishing here in the morning and put the radio on in the car. And there he was, talking, and boring us all to death, right? But of course, last night, it became clear that this so-called fully costed defence plan isn't fully costed, and he's leaving a £5 billion black hole for Andy Burnham to figure out how to fill. And it turns out that basically the Ministry of Defence has got to make £10 billion in cuts. And he's telling us that this is a defence plan. It's cobblers.
It's a lie.
Yeah.
And that's all they do now. And I mean, the thing about Andy Burnham in particular is that they're not saying Andy Burnham has a detailed plan for governing and fixing this country. They're not saying Andy Burnham, you know, really knows how to govern a nation and what that involves. What they're saying is Andy Burnham can lie in a more charming way.
Yes.
Plus, he's a bit woo and a bit way, and he's got a funky hat.
And he's apparently from the north.
And he wears t-shirts in his 50s. You know, that is apparently how it's all done now. I mean, the amount of, you'll forgive the comment, but you know, men of a certain age wearing t-shirts.
Yes.
Philippe Sands wearing a t-shirt whilst giving away or trying to give away our Chagos Islands. You know, these people are just a disgrace. They're just narcissists and liars with no actual plan for government. We are a serious country, or we should be, but we're just completely failing on every degree. If I'm sympathetic to the politicians, I'd say that this isn't a new problem. This is been a problem that is at least 30 years in the making. It's probably something like 80 or 90 years in the making. It just started very slowly at the beginning, and in the last 30 years, it's massively ramped up. We are absolutely tied up in laws, which is why you get to whether or not Britain wants to deport people who come here illegally and perhaps send them to Rwanda or anywhere else, should be, if this was 100 years ago, that would be a very easy thing to decide. The question is, do we want to do it? At the moment, it's not an easy question to decide, because it's not just do we want to do it, it's how do we do it?
Yeah.
Because we've tied our hands with too many laws. We've made it incredibly... Look, I can do it. If a government comes to me and says, Stephen, we want a Rwanda plan that works, I'll go, okay, I can write that for you. That you're going to have to leave the ECHR. You're going to have to, you know, unincorporate this international law. You're going to have to unincorporate this international law. You're going to have to do this and do that and do that. It's a bit, you know, complex. But yes, you can do it. The answer is still yes. The answer is still yes. It's just that 100 years ago, the answer was also yes, but it was a lot clearer. But at the moment, so if you've got sympathy for these politicians, you'd say that they don't, because things are very complicated, they just don't know what they're doing. But I don't think they even care about what they're doing. I think from somebody like Andy Burnham, I have more contempt for him than I do for Keir, because Keir just felt like a sort of broken robot.
Yeah,
that's, you know,
right.
As a child, I had a little robotic toy that was very simplistic, but it would bump into the wall and then it immediately turned around so it could bump into other walls, and you could make it. You build mazes for this thing. That was what it was sold as. Right. That's Keir to me. Andy's like, oh, well, I'm a little bit charming. So it's like, oh, right. So you're a human being. So you actually know that you're lying. Yes. Because I'm not convinced Keir Starmer knew he was lying.
Well, I said this on Monday, funnily enough, that basically Keir Starmer wasn't actually a charlatan in the way that Andy Burnham is a charlatan. He is pretending to be something he's not. Keir Starmer didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. He kind of showed us every day. He was incompetent and he was kind of, lacking in empathy. He was incapable of emotion. He was a man who nobody really could understand because he wasn't really like a man. And he gave us that and he showed us that and he didn't hide it. Whereas Burnham is a much more, I would say, sort of, calculating, condescending, and really kind of quite sinister individual.
Yeah, and this is why I think the Labour Party really need to get him into office ASAP, because everyone's going to notice this.
Right.
And at this rate, he's going to have to resign before he gets into office. I mean, we just, time's running out. Get him into office quick, because he's going to have to resign.
Well, Christopher Snowden from the IEA put a great tweet out the other day saying that Andy Burnham is currently in a race to see whether he can become the most unpopular Prime Minister before he actually becomes Prime Minister.
But that, and again, we were always going to get here, because of this complicated web of laws that they're all existing in. Even the best-willed politician, even an honest politician right now, will find it incredibly difficult to govern without, serious legal support, because the laws are the problem.
Yeah.
And Andy Burnham clearly doesn't care about that. He doesn't want to fix anything. He just thinks he can lie better than Keir Starmer. And do you know what, Mike? He might very well be able to lie better than Keir Starmer. But the problem for Andy Burnham is that we're awake now, and we're paying attention now, and we're suffering this now. I mean, I had to explain to my dad just this awful phenomena. It's not me. I'm not the victim, but I now am a mutual on Twitter with some of the mums of the victims of atrocities. People like Rhiannon White's mum. She follows me, I follow her. So we're connected, and her daughter was murdered. This is impossible for me as a man, the age I am now. If you went back 20 years and told me, Stephen, this is the world you will live in, I would not believe you. I can't really believe the world I now live in. It's impossibly ghastly. It's grim, and Andy Burnham just thinks he's going to be a bit. He's going to do clips of the Fast Show, and we're all going to just believe that everything's okay. Nothing's okay, Andy, and you don't have a plan, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're not going to lie to me more convincingly, because I know it's a lie.
But he has hope in his heart, Stephen. I mean, that's his thing, hope in his heart. How about this from
every postcode?
This is from Vicky on Substack. Mike, Plymouth City Council are also giving new bills to migrants. Somebody who was on the waiting list who mentioned this was accused of being racist and threatened to be removed from the housing list, right? I mean, this is the thing. Do you ever encounter this in your kind of social circle? I don't know what your social circle is, but, do people look upon you as somebody who's a little bit off colour, a little bit racist, a little bit kind of, anti-migrant?
Well, my social circle is a beagle and a Labrador, so they're very forgiving.
They're very forgiving.
They don't have any sort of ridiculous views. But I've just never accepted that I'm not a racist. And racism is inherently stupid. If you really need me to explain to you why racism is stupid, I can explain to you why racism is stupid. It's just melanin in skin. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But one of the things I like to when you get these people, the very sensitive progressive left, who like to call everyone racist, then I like to sort of slightly tweak them a bit, just tease them a little, and just go, well, I'm an Anglo-Saxon. And my ancestors came here on small boats, and they were very stabby and dangerous. And frankly, I wouldn't let tens of thousands of my ancestors invade this country either. Right. So it's got nothing to do with skin color, has it? Got nothing to do with ethnicity. The simple fact is, you don't let thousands of dangerous men who are not educated, who are not culturally conditioned towards civility. I'm fundamentally, Mike, a first century BC Roman. And I take a very Roman view of everything. Romans didn't care about race, quite rightly, because racism is stupid. Romans cared about whether you were civilized or not civilized. Yeah. If you're not civilized, you're a barbarian and you're a threat. And if you're civilized, you are civilized, and you behave in a certain way. What we are doing, screw racism, because it's just a stupid idea. It's irrational on its own basis. Nobody is really racist. And if I actually met I wouldn't want to meet a racist, because it just immediately means that they're stupid. Yeah. But there is a difference, a fundamental difference between civilized people and barbarians. Yeah. And what we are doing is importing thousands of barbarians. And that has got nothing to do with ethnicity. It's entirely about culture. I mean, if I wanted to, I could have a child and raise them really badly, not send them to school, not educate them, not give them boundaries, not give them rules, and my child would become a barbarian. As I said, I'm more than happy to admit, my ethnic ancestors were barbarians. That's what they were. We eventually civilized because civilization is a process. Being a civilized human being is something every human being can aspire to. I'd like to think that they would aspire to that. Lots of my fellow human beings, I'm afraid, don't. But it's perfectly acceptable for you as a civilization, for us as a country, to say, well, you're civilized, you're not civilized.
Yeah.
That is a distinction, a line we can hold.
Exactly right. And I think that is the issue that many people have as they walk around the Britain that is today's Britain, that it's becoming more and more uncivilized as opposed to becoming more and more civilized. And that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah. And the whole racism thing is just a waste of time. It's a massive distraction. Nobody cares. It's just, we should just need to everybody needs to shut up about racism because it's not a real problem. The real problem is that we have a lot of people in our society who refuse to be civilized. And I get very angry. So there was a tweet I saw yesterday about how young people are now not speaking properly. They're not speaking in proper English. That they've developed their own little patois. They've developed their own little ghetto speak. Every single one of those human beings who does that, they're just kids, Mike. They're not going to have a proper job, are they? They're not going to settle down. They're not going to buy a house. They're not going to have kids. I mean, that's all I want for people. All I want for everybody on this island is the chance to live in peace, have a good living, have a proper job, contribute to society, marry, have kids, and settle down. That should be what we're engaged in, and instead we're telling them what you talk in this incredibly bizarre way and become a petty criminal, and if you're lucky enough, you might become a major criminal. Yeah, that's no life for anybody. That's damning them to, and I get very, very upset about how we betray our young people. Catherine Berbel-Singh was brilliant on this at ARC. I think that's gone global. I think more and more people have watched it, and anybody who hasn't seen Catherine Berbel-Singh speaking at ARC needs to Google Catherine Berbel-Singh speaking at ARC and watch it and understand that if you genuinely care about the young people of this country, as I would bet money, Mike, that everybody watching this does actually genuinely care about the youth of our country, and again doesn't give a toss whether they've got melanin in their skin or not, and what ethnos they technically are. Nobody rational cares about this rubbish. We do care about civilization versus barbarity. That's a very important distinction to hold, because you don't want to be amongst barbarians. As I said, I would not want to be surrounded by tens of thousands of my own ethnic ancestors because they were barbarians, and I wouldn't feel safe. In exactly the same way, I don't feel safe on the streets of London. I've got to go into London today, and I will not feel safe on the streets of London because we have imported barbarians.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I'll just finish up with yet another. Yeah, very well said. You've actually nailed it, I think, for the first time ever in terms of this actual debate, and that's the way we should take it forward. Final note from, is this from Vicky? Can't see. Good morning. Northants Council, it says here, is converting a pub built in the 1800s with its outbuildings and grounds for homing 40 illegals. Mr. C, that's from. Sorry, I missed that from the top. So this is obviously going on up and down the country. And people are going to be, because these will be uncivilized people being put into these places as well. And it will only end in disaster, I'm afraid. Shocking, though it is. Stephen, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Love the hair. Enjoy London. Make sure you get home safely at the end of it. And I think it's going to be quite a nice day today, actually. Yeah, keep your fingers crossed. And don't put an expensive watch on, whatever you do. And don't use your phone on the street either. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Stephen Barrett, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for talking to us. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. We've got loads and loads of other clips to show you. We've got Richard III coming up on the defence budget as well, because she's making out that they fully costed it. I don't know why they think we can believe a word that they say. They told us they'd fully costed everything before they became the government. Do you remember? They said, oh yeah, we've fully costed every single government department. We know exactly what we're going to do. We're ready to hit the ground running. And I'm afraid that's exactly what they weren't. They hit the ground and smacked straight into it as if they were a plane that didn't have any wheels. And that was the end of the government then. Car crash, first day of business. Absolutely unbelievable. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to Lee Harris. We've got loads of other great guests coming up later on today. We've got Sarah Pochin coming on, Linda Doobly, Andrew Fox is here, Laura Perrins as well, Teresa Coffey. Right now, though, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
I'm Edward Hughes Starmer's finally shuffling off after his defence master plan, slapping on £15 billion for drones, hypersonics, and a fancy hybrid navy, while quietly carving out a £5 billion black hole for whoever follows. Brilliant timing, mate. The knob of the North's basically measuring the curtains for number 10, though he'll apparently keep popping back to Manchester, like it's a long commute, promising radical devolution and fixing our broken politics. King Charles has sensibly decided the freshly refurbished Buckingham Palace isn't for living in. Smart man. Why rattle around in a £370 million money pit when you can dodge the drama? England are smashing it at the World Cup. Fans behaving excellently abroad, naturally. While at home, we're still rowing about NHS maternity reports, migrant rules, and whether ditching maths tests for diversity was peak civil service genius. Laters, Tigers.
He's wearing a DR Congo shirt.
Dr. Congo.
Dr. Congo, as it's known by Mark Littlewood. That's the poll today, by the way, which we've got going on. Who is going to win the World Cup? Because England are playing tonight, and of course, as you can imagine, some of the papers are getting a little bit carried away with the whole idea of England, my England. Who's going to win the World Cup? England, 27%. Mexico, 12%. France, 53%. Dr. Congo, 8%. I have to say, I know that you don't like to talk too much about football, but having watched the France game last night, they look pretty good. Can't imagine them really losing to anyone, to be honest. So I'd put my money on France, I think, if I were you. We're going to talk some more about this ridiculous situation regarding the migrant housing scenario. Super chat's coming in. One from Snides who says, "We've lost the battle, MG. No one is listening." Well, there's a lot of people listening, and there's a lot of people listening to this show. Mike, did you see Michael Gove on Jubes? He said talking about white Brits was problematic. Do you know, I saw the aftermath of it on social media, but I didn't actually see him saying it. But I think it was to do with her contention that if she went to live in Japan, she could never become Japanese. Yeah. And if she went to live in China, she could never become Chinese. However, people are coming here, and we all assume that they can become British. One from Stephen, if the government allow people in and those people kill and rape our people, can the government be charged for endangering its citizens? Well, there's certainly an argument you could make there. I mean, we've got, for example, the first case of Ebola in Glasgow. And we were asking the question this morning. I wonder how that happened. Can Stephen please have his own show on UK Live? Now, there's a good idea.
I'm already working on it.
We are working on that. By the way, Russell Quirk's in tomorrow to do the papers,
yes, he is.
For those of you who have missed him. And of course, today, Kelvin McKenzie's back at 10 o'clock with another great show. He had Rupert Lowe on the show yesterday, so you can go and check that out if you missed it. But not during this show, obviously. From My Chips, we've got this. If Bedside Burnham is working from home and not needing number 10 South, Shabana Mahmood could use it for housing. Yeah, I mean, this is another ridiculous idea from the Knob of the North. As he's now going to become known on this show. I don't think I'll go down to south every single day. I'll just stay up north 1 day a week. And that way, I can save the government some money. Oh, no, I can't actually, because I'm going to have to hire a load of people to work for me up to north. And that'll double the amount of money that we spend on number 10. What a complete and utter plank. Tell Edward Hughes it's rowing, as in an argument, and not rowing, as in a boat. I think he just misread it.
Yeah.
Because, he's so busy, with his various different tasks that he does, because he's got a lot of tasks to do. Putting the news together is not as easy as it looks. So sometimes what happens is you see a word and you read it and you mispronounce it because you're kind of thinking about the next word you're about to say. Morning, Mike, says Loyal. Seeing Dr. Congo this evening will only be a chance many to get to see a doctor this year. Very good. I see what you did there. Both Pooch and I are not big fans of the England team, has to be said. And I'm not exactly going to be cheering Dr. Congo on. But I think it's what annoys me. This used to happen when I lived in Scotland. What annoys the Scots about the England team is just the ridiculous sort of over promotion that they get, and the kind of ridiculous over enthusiastic kind of commentating that goes on with it. We've got Lee Harris, I think, to speak to, haven't we? Is Lee there? Hello, Lee.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning to you, sir. Very good. Very nice to see you. I mean, I don't know whether you had a chance to see that councillor that I was showing earlier on from West Berkshire on the migrant flats. Did you see it?
I didn't.
Well, let me play it. Should we play it again? Because this is going to be my meltdown today. This is after yesterday's story in The Sun about £250,000 new build houses being given to migrants in Shropshire. This is West Berkshire for you. Have a look.
It used to be our offices. We used to have an office here for some of the social workers, but now, because it was redundant, we've actually turned it into some converted flats. These flats are amazingly finished out. They've got some beautiful carpets, they've got all fitted units, and 4 of them are actually 3-bedroom. So we've got 4 3-bedroom and 1 bedroom. These are going to be for both Afghan, Ukrainian. This is great for them because at the moment they're living in hostels and hotels, and we don't want that to happen in West Berkshire. So to get them into actually these sorts of accommodations, and such a lovely finish as well. It's beautiful. If you can look around, you can see the light in here. It's amazing. And we've got heat source pumps and actually proper cool radiators, heated radiators in the bathrooms, showers and baths. It's a really lovely finish. And we're going to have EV charging points outside for the car parking, which is, again, the latest innovations.
So if you get a free Tesla, you can charge it there as well. Isn't that nice? It's lovely. Very well finished, I think you'll find, Mr. Harris. And I'm sorry that you won't be able to occupy this particular accommodation because you're not a Ukrainian, as George Galloway would say. So unbelievable, though, isn't it? And since then, we've had several people, one from Plymouth, one from somewhere else, saying they're doing the same thing here.
Wrong one.
Yeah,
incredible, isn't it?
What gets me the most about this is going to lead, Mike, to the social contract completely breaking down.
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't, the general public don't miss this sort of thing. I mean, we've seen a little bit of this before with, single mums with kids who are top of or waiting for social housing, only to be gazumped, or a migrant family, or a house being turned into an HMO to jump the queue. This sort of thing is not going to. The public aren't going to let this go lightly. Put it that way.
No, they're really not, because in addition to the fact that these are new build or newly refurbished properties that have been given to people who are effectively not working, as far as I can tell, who will then not only not have to worry about paying the rent, but they won't have to worry about paying the electricity bill or paying their council tax. That'll all be paid for them as well, presumably. And I mean, if they've got charging points for EVs, does that mean they're going to get a free car as well? I mean, anything's possible. And they're also going to be wandering around the neighbourhood, aren't they? Which is not going to be pleasing to an awful lot of people.
Yeah, this is gonna aggravate a lot of people, more than aggravate. I mean, there's people that I speak to, Mike, who've been on the housing waiting list for years.
Yeah,
and we're seeing migrants and jumping the queue like this. As I said, this is going to completely damage that social contract. And, what gets me the most about this is why on earth we put ourselves in this situation at the moment. A lot of people just look at this situation and think, why aren't we just deporting as many illegal migrants as we can? Reform have said they're going to reverse indefinite leave to remain. This is what's going to free up the housing stock. And this is going to financially benefit the UK because it's an economic drain. All of this is a massive economic drain. Like you said, Mike, we are paying for this. And I can't, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky to have owned my own house. So, we saved up a very long time ago to get here. We're on the housing ladder. And when I see things like this, my heart sinks knowing the people that I've spoken to who are genuinely waiting for social housing. And a lot of these people should not be in the country in the first place. And this is a really poor sticking plaster solution that, like I said, is breaking down that social contract. It really does worry me, Mike, how the public are going to respond to this, especially over time when this problem is clearly going to get worse. Labour have no solution to this problem. That's the fundamental point about all of this. It doesn't matter what Labour do. They can move people into social housing. They can move them into HMOs. We can put illegal migrants in barracks. But the point is, nothing is going to change unless we physically do something about the people that are already here. Nothing's going to change, and it's going to be the same. Typical comment about Andy Burnham's premiership. He might have a bit of a honeymoon period, but the fundamental underlying problems, like this one, like what are we going to do with the thousands of fighting age men that we're allowing into the country, and all of the migrants, by the way, which are living in London, not contributing to the economy and claiming benefits. That's not going to go away, and Labour do not have a plan to fix that.
No, they really don't. And with every day that passes, there's a new story which tells us that the system simply doesn't work. There's a story in the Times this morning talking about how Shabana Mahmood is going to change the law now to make it difficult for people to avoid deportation just because they've had families while they were living here illegally, right? But then in the small print, they admit it's actually going to be quite difficult to do, and we won't be able to kick them out anyway. So in fact, they can say they're going to change the law, but they're actually not changing the law. We have 20,000, we found out the other day, 20,000 foreign criminals who have served time in prison, so they've obviously been committing some fairly serious crimes, who are due to have been deported. That's why they were released from prison, but they haven't been. So they're just wandering about the streets of Britain, dangerous criminals who shouldn't be here, who are here.
Yeah, it's all smoke and mirrors, like you say. And it's like you were saying, I know this is a completely different subject, Mike, but I remember you saying to me last week that, they're talking about NHS waiting lists going down. You look into it, NHS waiting lists aren't going down. They say they're going to stop illegal migrants moving into £250,000. Was it? I think it's up to 100 now. I think yesterday it was 83, and I read in one of the papers this morning it's now over 100 migrants are going to move into these £250,000 houses.
Yeah.
And I honestly cannot get my head around the rhetoric versus the reality but from this Labour Party. They she's going to talk about making it illegal, but we all know that they're not going to do that. And in exactly the same way as this Labour Party have said that, look, they are deporting some people. So deportations are up. The majority of those deportations, although the Labour Party would have you believe otherwise, are voluntary, right? So people leaving of their own accord. Yes, the Labour Party are deporting some of them. But like you say, if one of these immigrants, and this was exactly the same with the Conservatives, Mike, it's why I won't vote Conservative again or give them another chance, because they had the opportunity. In fact, at one point, they had the plane on the tarmac. They had the plane on the tarmac full of illegal migrants. In fact, they were actually full of foreign criminals. And one of them makes a claim. One of them puts a phone call into a pajama judge, within the ECHR, and they just fold like a deck chair.
Yeah.
The Conservatives did it, and so will the Labour Party, because the fundamental point is they will not, stand up against the ECHR, which I find baffling, Mike. Do you remember when Cameron did it? Cameron stood up and said that he wasn't going to give prisoners the votes. What is it he said? Over my dead body. Yeah. Right. So if he can say that, why can't we say over our dead bodies are we not deporting this Pakistani rapist because he's got the right to a family life? What if he can do it for the prisoners?
It's insane.
Why on earth can't we do it for that?
Exactly right. I mean, yesterday after the Sun did that story about the Shropshire houses and the new builds being given to the migrants you just mentioned there, they said, actually, we're going to pass a new rule which says that we won't be giving them new builds anymore, which is not to say we're not going to house them. You're just not going to put them in anything new. And it also says, right, contractors like Serco and Mears have been told new sites should not be put near schools, or areas that risk social tensions. Well, which is kind of an admission, is it not, that these people are dangerous around children?
Yeah.
So
totally.
what are we doing? Why are we housing them anywhere?
Yeah, it's exactly that. Well, they should be detained and they should be deported.
Yeah.
And I really like what Stephen said actually prior to this, where he said that people are waking up now. He is absolutely right. People are waking up to this, and they can see that it is genuinely, like I said at the beginning, it's going to cause serious problems with social cohesion. They shouldn't be put in HMOs. They shouldn't be put in hotels. And again, this was the other sleight of hand from this Labour government. We all knew it was going to happen. It's just very annoying seeing it actually play out. And that was the fact that they said that they were going to shut the hotels down. Of course, that makes a great headline, but we know where they're going to put them. They're putting them in HMOs. They're putting them in our communities, and they should be detained and deported. They're never going to fix this problem unless none of this matters. It doesn't matter where they put them. What matters, well, it does matter obviously to the communities there, but what I mean by that is none of this matters because they're never going to fix the underlying problem. Until we change the law, until we stand up to the ECHR, we are never going to deport people, and we're going to have to find housing for these people. And that's, I think, what's now sticking in the stomachs of the British people. We are awake. Stephen was absolutely right to say that. And I suppose the only good news all of this leads to, Mike, is that it's just not going to lead to another Labour government. I genuinely believe that this is the Achilles heel. Now, it's one of the most serious issues to the British public. Immigration is right up there. Housing is right up there in terms of issues that are important to the British people. And it doesn't matter what Shabana Mahmood says, and it doesn't matter, Mike, how long this honeymoon period was going to be, because it's going to lead to exactly the same place as before.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the trouble is there is still a cohort of people, and some of them run charities, and some of them are, councillors, and some of them are politicians who don't think there's anything wrong with housing these migrants and keeping them in Britain and offering them sanctuary. I mean, I talked yesterday about how Lewisham Council was the first council in Britain to be a sanctuary council, which basically means that, you will get incentives to put refugees inside your own house. They will be giving incentives to charities to kind of, buy properties to put them in. There is this kind of establishment, I guess, tide, if you like, that we have to, somehow fight against to say, this is not what we want.
No, it's an absolute scandal, that city of sanctuary. Where I live, I'm very lucky, actually. They tried to do that city of sanctuary. I say they did it without a vote. They voted through our agreement to join this city of sanctuary where I live, but they did it on the quiet. And as soon as the locals found out about it, they demanded a second vote. And one of the Liberal Democrat councillors even said that he didn't know what he was voting for, Mike, which made me laugh. But in fairness to them, they actually voted it down. And now we have left this city of sanctuary. And I'm very pleased, because what it means, or what it was going to mean, was you kind of go on a green list to the government. And that is so with HMOs and with empty hotels. So basically what it means is you're going to put up very little, or if any, resistance as an area to having migrants ferried to your area. Now, I'm in the West Country. We're quite lucky in terms of the dispersal of illegal migrants is very low down here. And yeah, the locals kicked off. And that's, again, going back to the point, as people are waking up, we don't want to have migrants, illegal migrants, people we don't know anything about, young fighting age men congregating in, large groups around the city centre or around wherever it is they're staying, because it leads to that breakdown in that social contract again. We don't live in a high trust society anymore, Mike. And like I say, the only good thing about this, even though I cringed when the headlines came out about Angela Rayner spreading out, I can't remember the phraseology she used.
I don't know what you're going to say now.
Yeah, spreading out illegal migrants across the country, Mike.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry, I thought you were going to say something else.
But the result of that is that it's going to wake more people up faster. And that is what we're seeing now. We're seeing more protests, and rightly so. And people need to carry on doing that. because we can't have situations like we've seen in the newspapers this morning where illegal migrants are getting brand new build £250,000 houses when British people are on the housing list. Our council tax is going up, our taxes are going up, the cost of living is going up. It's just not fair, Mike. And it needs to be sorted. And it's not, sadly, it's not going to be sorted until we get rid of this vile government.
No, absolutely right. Lee, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Lee Harris there reported into us on Wednesday, the 1st of July, believe it or not. It's coming up to 1 minute past 8. We've got a couple of messages that have come in. One from Olivia. It says, Norway are going to win the World Cup. I have to say, I've got quite a nice feeling about Norway. Yeah. I don't think they're going to win it, but I love the fact that they are very proud of their country. Yeah. And they've got this amazing rowing thing going on. This is one for Edward Hughes, by the way. Yeah. They do rowing, not rowing, and they have the guy with the drum, and he beats the drum, and it's a Viking thing. And when they actually did a picture, do you remember, Pooch? They did a picture, a promotional picture just before the World Cup, and they were all accused of being sort of ethno-nationalists because they were celebrating the Viking culture that they come from, which is brilliant, right? This one from Delmin, who says on Substack, good morning, Mike and co. How about turning the sign red for England tonight? Also, what has happened to Mr. Quirk? Well, as we said, Mr. Russell Quirk will be here tomorrow with the papers, and we are trying to figure out a time and a place for him to be able to do a show on UK Live online, which I'm sure we will do. Coming up, we've got Andrew Fox. We're going to talk to him about the state of the nation, the state of the defence budget as well, after it was announced by Keir Starmer yesterday, and not actually fully costed. We'll have Rachel Reeves talking about that. Right now, though, let's get Edward Hughes with some news.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes. Starmer's finally shuffling off after his defence master plan, slapping on £15 billion for drones, hypersonics, and a fancy hybrid navy, while quietly carving out a £5 billion black hole for whoever follows. Brilliant timing, mate. The knob of the North's basically measuring the curtains for number 10, though he'll apparently keep popping back to Manchester, like it's a long commute, promising radical devolution and fixing our broken politics. King Charles has sensibly decided the freshly refurbished Buckingham Palace isn't for living in. Smart man. Why rattle around in a £370 million money pit when you can dodge the drama? England are smashing it at the World Cup. Fans behaving excellently abroad, naturally. While at home, we're still rowing about NHS maternity reports, migrant rules, and whether ditching maths tests for diversity was peak civil service genius. Laters, tigers.
Rowing, banging on about it. There you go. I've changed it to red. How about that? In honour of the England team for the World Cup match tonight. 5 o'clock, it's on.
Simon Guilford.
What?
Simon Guilford on screen.
Oh, Simon Guilford. Edward Hughes is a traitor by wearing a Congo football shirt. Well, he's not a traitor. He's entitled to support any team he likes. You know, we live in a world of free speech. He doesn't have to support England. Maybe he's not English.
He's Welsh.
He's Welsh, isn't he? Yeah. So, I mean, the Welsh are not keen on supporting England. Why would they? Did you see, by the way, that Andy Burnham clip that I put in live? Is there any chance we could play that?
I haven't. Charlotte hasn't clicked it.
Oh, okay.
Let me try and do it. Okay.
Let's see if you can. The only reason I want to is because Andrew Fox was commenting on it. It's basically Andy Burnham, or the knob of the North, as we like to call him, being a complete plank and talking about making a poster to commemorate Tit North. Absolutely ridiculous. Andrew, I think, joins us now. Andrew, very good morning to you.
How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, very well. Nice to see you. I enjoyed your Twitter remarks about Mr. Burnham, or as we call him now, the knob of the North. I don't even think we should call him Andy Burnham. I mean, it's quite pathetic that we seem to have found ourselves in this place. And after watching Keir Starmer's performance yesterday, revealing that he had a fully costed, I don't know why he continues to just tell these lies, fully costed defence plan, which it turns out isn't fully costed at all. It's not only is it not fully costed, it's got a £5 billion shortfall.
Oh, there's shortfalls all over the place. So the first one is this 4.7 billion, which is quite, I mean, in some ways it's petty and entertaining, because what he's done is he's thrown a hospital pass to his successor, whoever that may be. Yeah. By saying, okay, in your first budget, you've got to find 4.7 million for defence extra. So that's the first one. Then, of course, between now and 2030, he's expecting defence to find 10 billion of efficiency savings, right. Which means cuts. no matter how you spin it. Look, I spent 16 years in the army. I never once saw an efficiency saving that didn't mean either someone losing their jobs or the army not being able to do something that they were doing before.
Right.
So there's two huge financial gaps that we've identified straight away. This whole thing is a farce and it's not fit for purpose, quite frankly.
I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? Because the people at the sharp end of it, i.e. the soldiers and the sailors and the airmen, are the ones who are going to end up doing the suffering. I mean, we saw during the initial weeks of the Straits of Hormuz Iran war conflict problem that we weren't even able to muster a Navy ship to send to the region because they were all in sort of dry dock getting fixed up. And I assume that hasn't improved any. And I think just last week we saw Starmer cancelling the building of some more frigates and some more destroyers because apparently we can't afford to do it.
Yeah, look, so when I left the army, I went to work as a civilian lecturer at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, training young officer cadets who are going to go on and become second lieutenants.
Yeah.
And I'm still in touch with a few of them now. Now, when I commissioned in 2007, we were fighting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We got to our units. We were on that conveyor belt where we were getting deployed all the time. And the second lieutenants I speak to are now junior captains, are busier today in a peacetime army than I was as a second lieutenant when we were fighting two wars. And the reason for that is because they've got no soldiers. The army has cut itself to the bone and maintained, if not increased, the number of commitments that it's trying to carry out around the world. And it's just utterly unsustainable. And that's going to have real knock-on implications. Not only can we not defend ourselves, but also we're going to struggle to retain people in the armed forces because it's miserable. This is not a way to defend the country. And we can talk in a minute, if you like, about the two real problems that we've got when it comes to getting this defence investment plan over the line.
Yeah, no, let's do that because I wanted to talk to you about it. I was, in fact, saving myself to talk to you about it because it's all very well talking to pundits about defence who have got a view, but you've actually got knowledge. So tell us what the problems are.
Okay, so there's two really big problems, and the Defence Investment Plan doesn't really address either of them. So problem one is the army we have today. The defence setup we have today. We don't have enough planes for the Royal Air Force. We don't have enough ships for the Royal Navy. We don't have enough soldiers and armoured vehicles for the army. We don't have enough ammunition to fire. So we've got this hollow force that's got some really good high-end niche capabilities to contribute to a coalition force, but is no way near big enough or well manned enough. Problem two is much bigger and more difficult because you've got to look at where we need to be as in 10, 15, even 5 years time. Because what we're seeing is technology is accelerating in how it develops. So if you look at Ukraine, the war has turned into 3 different wars since it started, and that was just in 2022. You've had the armoured battle, then you had trench warfare, and now you've got this automated drone warfare that's sort of like nothing we've ever seen. And when I was down on the front in Ukraine, I was with James Glancy, who I know you know, former Royal Marine, and we looked at each other and we just didn't recognise what we were seeing because drones have changed it so much. And yet they're really cheap to produce and they accelerate in terms of their technological development really, really quickly. So how do you procure that when it takes 10 years to get a tank from design to delivery to the fighting forces? It's going to be out of date by the time it gets into service. And war's probably completely changed in 10 years. If it's changed in 4, it's certainly going to change in 10. So we don't have a procurement system that's set up to allow us to buy the kit we need to fight tomorrow's war, whilst at the same time we have an army that's not fit to fight it right now. So there's 2 problem sets and the dip doesn't change either of them.
Right. Well, let's have a look at what Rachel Reeves had to say, right? Because she was speaking yesterday as well about this so-called fully costed budget for the armed forces and for defence. And it sort of illustrates just how useless this government is. Have a look.
As Chancellor, I have overseen the biggest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. But demands on UK defence are growing, which is why our Defence Investment Plan boosts defence spending by £15 billion. More money spent more effectively to protect the UK and our allies. This money includes investment in drones and autonomous systems, learning the lessons of Ukraine, as well as building a brand new hybrid and uncrewed land vehicle capability, and an initial £400 million contribution to setting up a multilateral defence mechanism with our partners. I am boosting the defence budget faster than any other major government department. We will increase defence spending to 3% of GDP in the next Parliament too. UK security is our #1 priority, and this money will ensure that the UK can fight the wars of tomorrow, not the past. And this defence investment plan sets us up to do just that.
Well, she might say that, but I don't think any of that's true, because it turns out that there is no date for spending to hit 3% of GDP. And all of what she's describing is something that's happening sometime in the future.
Yeah, and 3% is nowhere near enough. If we look at Germany, they're at 3.5 already. The Polish are at 5.
Yeah.
You know, this is a really serious period we're entering into. It's incredibly unstable. We look at how Russia is in the east of Europe. They have explicitly said they're our enemy. They've carried out attacks on our soil. If you remember the Skripal poisonings in Salisbury, they've almost certainly had a crack at our undersea cables. They specialise in this kind of hybrid warfare. Where they attack our infrastructure. We know they're weaponizing migrant flows across the channel. There's proof that Russia's ununiformed Wagner forces have been people smuggling from Africa to the UK. Russia is absolutely our enemy. So that's a real problem. We've now got Iran that's basically emboldened after the Americans made a mess of that war. So that's a threat. We see China, who aren't quite in the place to have a go at Taiwan yet, but they certainly have that intention and will build towards it. This is an incredibly unstable world. We need the money now, because if we wait till we have another Dunkirk, you can only imagine what the repercussions will be. This is a thing we need to prepare for, and they're just not taking it seriously.
Right. And in terms of the drone capability that they say they're going to now sort of suddenly look upon as a developing area, we're way behind the curve on that, aren't we? I mean, you've got drones everywhere in the world, apart from here. Apparently, I think I read a story a few weeks back saying that if there was to be a conflict of some kind, we've only got enough drones for about a week.
Yeah, I mean, look at my old regiment. So Parachute Regiment, based in Colchester. You've got 2 and 3 para there. I know 2 para have set up their own drones platoon. So they're making moves in the right direction. But when you go to the front in Ukraine, so I walked into a battalion headquarters, they were on the front line. And obviously I've spent a lot of time in battalion headquarters and that kind of things in my career. I didn't recognise what I saw for the simple reason they had 150 live drone feeds coming into their operations room. They had every square metre or inch of their front line locked down from the sky. Manoeuvre was impossible. If you moved in that area and you weren't Ukrainian, then they would drop a bomb on you straight off the bat. And it's just a very different world. So we need drones. We need to be able to match that capability. We also need counter-drone capability, because we need to be able to stop the enemy doing that to us. And we're nowhere near where we need to be on that. But drones is only part of the picture, because people obsess about them because they're new and shiny. Ukraine wouldn't look like that if Ukraine had our air power. The reason they've developed drones is effectively a cheap way of doing what planes do. I mean, it's a bit more than that as well, but basically that's what it amounts to. If the Ukrainians had NATO's air power, they wouldn't need to be doing the drone stuff they're doing. So it won't look like that when we go to war. So what it means is you need the high-end, expensive F-35s, the ships, the armoured fighting vehicles. You need those too, as well as drones, as well as ways of stopping the drones. And that's the real challenge. And that's why it's so expensive and why we need so much more than the money Labour has given us right now.
Yeah, unbelievable. So how would you sum up, finally, Andrew, the announcement yesterday from Starmer?
Too little, not soon enough, and frankly, not serious.
Wow. Andrew Fox, thank you very much indeed. Defence specialist, former military man himself from the Parachute Regiment, knows what he's talking about. And he says Keir Starmer is a dud. We know he's a dud. He's always been a dud. He'll never be anything else. And the fact that he came out and actually told more brazen lies is extraordinary to me. Indefensible is what the front page of the Daily Mail says. Starmer finally unveils his defence plan, but there's a £5 billion black hole. The Ministry of Defence is to make £10 billion in cuts, and there's still no date for spending to hit 3% of GDP. Don't leave Britain defenceless. I mean, what a joker. How have we ended up with this bloody bunch of amateurs running the place? And now we've got the Knob of the North. I'll play a clip of him in a minute as well. Coming up, we've got Linda Doobly as well, and we've got plenty else that's going on that we could be telling you about. Coming up, where are we?
Quickie, Mike.
Sorry, go on.
There you go. There's something about the sign.
Oh, something about the sign. Yeah, it looks orange, says Narky Spark. Yeah, it might be your television. You might need to adjust it. It definitely
Really
looks
bright red here.
definitely red here, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've got this. Oh, it's a picture of Ziggy. I didn't realise what it was. It was incoming. Picture of Ziggy walking around in the cornfield. Very nice. Looking very happy. He's got to lose a bit of weight apparently.
Yeah, so I hear.
So he's on. Yeah, he's on a bit of a diet regimen which you'll hate.
Yes.
Labradors just love he just loves eating. So that's the only thing he likes doing. Anyway, let's talk to Linda Doobly, who is here. Linda, very good morning to you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. Very nice to see you. Well, I haven't seen you for a while actually. I feel I've missed you. Where have you been?
Oh, well, you've been on holiday.
Well, I was only away for a week. Do you know where I went?
You've been away.
Yeah.
It looked very nice.
It was Cyprus. It was very nice. Hardly anybody knows about that,
No,
though, Pooch.
I didn't know you'd been away.
I hardly ever mention it at all. Now, let's start with the Knob of the North, because I'm going to play you a little clip of his from yesterday, because he is even, I mean, in the few short days that he's been, you know, the sort of Prime Minister in waiting, he's now annoyed me more than Keir Starmer did in the first 2 years. Have a look at this.
Love the interest Number 10 North is generating. Looking at some of the designs for it, look at this. A northern landscape, these buildings, amazing. The Liver building, Everton's offices are in there. But that sky, oh my goodness, we're not that menacing, are we? 5 out of 10. Now this one, interesting, but maybe global warming coming to the north of England. Feels like that right now, doesn't it? But there's a big plus for this one, yellow train. Where's the B on it? Without that, but still, a good 7 out of 10. Now, this looks good, getting better. Very Manchester scene going on here. Canal, bit of spinning fields or something like that. Old building with a new building at the side. Again, maybe a little on the gloomy side with that sky, but this is a solid 8.5 out of 10. I think we have a winner. Look at this, absolutely brilliant. Manchester vibes in the area. Don't look back, not in anger. Don't look back to Westminster. I'm loving this.
I mean, if we got 2 years of that crap, and really.
Goodness me. I tell you what, there's two ways of reading that. There's Number 10 North or No 10 North.
Yes. I mean, the idea of Number 10 North is so ridiculous and pathetic, and the fact that he says he's going to spend 1 day a week up there, you know, as if it's like a different country. All that's going to happen is they're going to end up spending yet more money on admin, more money on travel, more money on, you know, hiring people that don't have jobs, because that's all they know how to do.
Yeah, because for quite a long period of time, nearly 10 years, I was a reporter on a programme called Tonight with Trevor McDonald. And they split that programme between London and Granada HQ in Manchester. And I used to fly up to Manchester twice a week for that programme. Now, there was an identical production team in London, an identical production team in Manchester, and the only thing that happened, and this was in the interest in, you know, closing the North-South divide in media, the only thing that increased in the period of time that I did it was the travel budget for the staff who went continuously between the two cities. It was a complete waste of time and had no impact at all upon either the story selection or the story production.
That's the thing. I mean, I know people from when, you know, 5 Live moved up to Manchester and the BBC kind of shifted a bunch of people up to Salford Quays, right, which is like Canary Wharf without the people. And they used to send, there was one particular presenter, well, I'll say it was Susanna Reid. He used to still live in London, and they would basically ferry her backwards and forwards so she could take her kid out of school on an afternoon, but then get back to Manchester in time to do the show in the morning for breakfast. But I mean, it cost an absolute fortune to do that. You know, taxis every day, you know, first class train fares. And I had a friend of mine who still works in the business. He used to be hired to go up to do a piece on Richard Bacon's show once a week for 10 minutes. And they'd put him on a train from Euston up to Manchester, taxi from, you know, Piccadilly to Salford Quays, taxi back. He was only on for 10 minutes, you know. So it wasn't like they suddenly started using local people. They still used all the same people and ferried them backwards and forwards on the train.
Yeah, It's just cosmetic, and that's the problem with this number 10 North thing. It's kind of a catchy title, and I listened to the whole speech, and in the room it got quite a big cheer, but that's because it's a simple idea that people get their heads round when it's delivered to you immediately. But I think it's cosmetic, and that's the problem, is although Andy Burnham, I think, technically made a good speech, he has great command of the English language, and he loves making speeches, and I often say to people when I'm doing media training, you've got to love making a speech to be good at it, and he does love doing it. So
But he loves
technically,
himself, doesn't he?
yeah, 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 but let's face it, a lot of politicians got big egos. That's fine. It's almost a prerequisite for the job. So he loves making the speech. He makes a reasonably proficient speech. But the problem is, it's like, you know, there's the old saying, the icing on the cake. It's got the icing and no cake.
Yeah, well, there's no substance to it. And the reason he got a sort of, a reasonably good reception for the speech was because he packed the hall with all of his mates. The press were moved away from being at the front in order that they couldn't ask any questions. He refused to allow Quentin Letts to come in and look at it, which was so stupid. Because it was almost as though, if he doesn't come in, he won't write a sketch. Well, he did one anyway, right? Because that's what we do. There's such a thing as television. You can watch it on TV, and it's just the same. But yeah,
especially a parliamentary sketch writer. Why would you stop him when you know perfectly well it's his job to do exactly what you've just said?
Yes.
So I don't really understand. You can argue the merits of whether he allowed Q&As or not, but you cannot argue that the press are going to be writing about you. And I think there is some merit if you've got a singular speech to make. I think there's some merit in saying, no, I'm just not on this occasion going to allow Q&A, but you have, as a policy, you have to allow questions and answers. He should have allowed them at the Makerfield by-election, and he will have to allow them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely right. I thought it was rather amusing to see one of the people in support of him not allowing questions was Alistair Campbell, who was, of course, the initiator of the original spin machine. Who used to favour journalists and not favour journalists, and used to ring. I don't know if you were ever on the receiving end of a call from him, but he used to ring people a lot.
Something?
Go on.
Yeah, I was a young journalist on the Daily Mail when Alistair he's a bit older than me, and he was on the Daily Mirror. And I think I often used to see him in the back bar of the Harrow, which I'm sure you remember, Mike.
I do.
And he was an extraordinary person, and I had a very quick memory of him this week when Dame Penelope Keith died, because she was involved in a court case, a blackmailing court case down in Sussex at Lewes Crown Court, and Alistair Campbell and I were doorstepping her.
Wow, that's funny.
I do remember him, but I remember.
Was he drinking in those days?
No, I tell you why I know what happened is because John Merritt, his great friend, who was an absolutely amazing guy, brilliant reporter, tremendous presence, died from I think he died from a form of cancer, and Alistair decided to run the London Marathon, and that's when he gave up drinking.
Yeah, right. Okay, interesting. Yeah, well, he never gave up bullying people, but that's another story.
No, he didn't. Yeah, he was. I think he just went too far, and I knew him as well. I didn't know him, but our paths crossed again when I was in Hong Kong. I was Asia Bureau Chief for Fox News, and I was covering the fringes of a prime ministerial visit, and Alistair was there, as were a lot of other UK journalists. I was working for American Networks, so our paths didn't cross that much. But I think the problem is he's a clever guy, and he got used to a level of intellectual bullying, which did not work very well for people who were far less able than him, actually, and timid and frightened, and so maybe he should have been a bit more generous where they were concerned.
Yeah, I think he should have definitely been that. A couple of people are commenting on how they love your room. Loving Linda's vibey room, says Denise.
I want to go around for a beer.
What does vibey mean?
It means it looks cool.
Oh, okay. You want to go round for a beer?
Yeah.
Pooch wants to come round for a beer, apparently.
Feel free.
It does look nice. Let's talk about something else. As I see you were reposting a piece about Bridget Phillipson talking about white working class children being an under-discussed area, right? As you point out, or as the person who posted it points out, she is the Education Secretary. There's a piece in the Telegraph today saying white working class students are now excluded from almost all Oxbridge diversity scholarships, according to some analysis by the Telegraph. It's becoming more and more difficult, isn't it, for working class families to actually break into any kind of system and to get a decent
Yeah.
job.
I just must give credit to the great Jim Chimmery, who actually originated that
Yeah.
post on X. I think he's an absolutely brilliant commentator. And when I read that, I just thought nail on head in his observation of Bridget Phillipson and her ridiculous stance on white working class people, as though this sudden group had arisen that they were, quote, discussing. The fact of the matter is that white working class boys have been shortchanged for quite a long time now. And something should have happened a long time before. It's all very well giving a break to people from minorities. There's not anything wrong with that. But when you've got a large group of people who clearly need some support, and it has been clear for a decade, you have got to get off your bottom and start helping them. And there is no evidence of that happening. And now, where are we? You know, we've got a very uneven society. We've got white working class boys who are lacking in self-esteem. The problem with lacking in self-esteem is that only really ends in a negative position. So you end up with a lot of aggression and a lot of toxicity and a lot of other problems that don't have anything to do with education, but they do have an awful lot to do with society. So I think Bridget Phillipson should get off a high horse and stop virtue signalling and start getting with the programme for white working class boys.
Yeah, and stop making out that she grew up as some kind of, orphan stroke, miserable, sort of Victorian individual who never had nothing.
Actually, I get a bit tired of all politicians droning on about their background and their lived experience. What I want is politicians with expertise. I don't want to hear where their dad went to work. I don't want to hear where their mum went to work. I don't want to hear any of that. It's all totally irrelevant to me.
Right, although I did quite like hearing about the fact that her family made a 900% profit on the sale of their council house. Because it kind of poked me, it sort of slightly poked the pomposity bubble that she's been living under for a while.
You can trust the Mail on Sunday to go over believe me, I was a reporter on that newspaper. They will go over everything with a fine-tooth comb.
Yes, absolutely. And quite right too. I wish more people would do that. Now, I'm going to finish up with one last question for you, because I saw last week that Kelvin Mackenzie sneaked you into his studio, unbeknownst to me. Absolutely disgraceful behaviour. But we're very happy with our little mini bijou bespoke television station that we're starting up called UK Live. What do you make of it so far?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but you have talked to me about maybe doing a spot. So I would dearly love to do that. I think that it's going really well, and I think you've got your finger on the pulse. And what I will say is, no matter how much technology changes, no matter how much the media landscape changes, there is always room for really great storytelling. And that's essentially what you're about.
Yeah.
You're about the old-fashioned values of storytelling with a bit of new tech thrown in, which I think Pooch is very well versed in.
He is.
And so it works very, very well. And I think, I think it's great to see that some things don't change. I mean, storytelling has never changed. It hasn't changed for hundreds of years. It's not going to change ever, because human beings are human beings.
Yeah, they really are. And there's so many stories that aren't being told, funnily enough, by a lot of people in the mainstream kind of world. So we're very happy to pick up the mantle and run with it. So, yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon and on a more regular basis, Linda. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Good to see you. A couple of super chats. There's one here from Dapopo. So if we know Russia are facilitating fetching African economic migrants towards us, why can we not just counter it and take them straight back? Well, you would think that would a straightforward question, isn't it? Why can't we take them straight back? Yeah, well, exactly. There's a piece in the papers today with Shabana Mahmood saying that people are not going to be allowed to stay here as easily as they were just because they're having families here while they're living here illegally. But then it turns out that actually it's going to be quite difficult for them to be deported, because we are still, unfortunately, tied to the European Convention on Human Rights, which makes life extremely difficult for any government that wants to do it, because all they do is end up getting tied up by human rights lawyers. Absolutely bleeding ridiculous. Now, Sarah Poachin is here. We're going to talk to her very shortly. However, first up, I think, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes Starmer's finally shuffling off after his defence master plan, slapping on £15 billion for drones, hypersonics, and a fancy hybrid navy, while quietly carving out a £5 billion black hole for whoever follows. Brilliant timing, mate. The knob of the North's basically measuring the curtains for number 10, though he'll apparently keep popping back to Manchester, like it's a long commute, promising radical devolution and fixing our broken politics. King Charles has sensibly decided the freshly refurbished Buckingham Palace isn't for living in. Smart man. Why rattle around in a £370 million money pit when you can dodge the drama? England are smashing it at the World Cup. Fans behaving excellently abroad, naturally. While at home, we're still rowing about NHS maternity reports, migrant rules, and whether ditching maths tests for diversity was peak civil service genius. Laters, tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Still saying rowing instead of rowing, by the way. Could you please correct that, Edward, you complete plonker? He's also supporting DR Congo, or Dr. Congo, as Mark Littlewood calls it, tonight against England, because he's Welsh. You know, it's up to him. I mean, people are moaning about it, but look, he's Welsh. He's not English. He doesn't have to support England. There's no three-line whip on that at all. We've changed the colour of our sign to red for England, so what's wrong with that? Anyway, Sarah Poacher is here, Reform MP, of course, for Helsby and what's the other place? Runcorn. For some reason, I completely forgot Runcorn. I know, but I got it round the wrong way. I was saying to somebody the other day, if you knew how many words I have to spout on a daily basis, it's not that surprising that occasionally I get one or two of them mixed up because, you know, of my great age and all that. Anyway, looking very well. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely the MP for Runcorn and Helsby.
It is, absolutely right. And of course you are from the North. But the thing I like about you being from the North is you don't bang on about it like the knob of the North, as we've now called him, Andy Burnham, who wants to not only transplant number 10 into the North, but he also now wants to kind of bring something from the North down to London. I mean, why is he so obsessed with the North?
Listen, I think he is spouting all of this word salad, as we call it, all this meaningless nonsense about T-shirts and Manchester, because he is avoiding the absolutely critical questions. He will not answer a question about his defence policy. He won't answer a question about his energy policy. And we hear today, don't we, that Ofcom have increased the energy price cap again by another 13%. But is he answering questions about whether he's going to drill in the North Sea, whether he's going to drill for gas in this country? We know we're sitting on all of the energy we need. No, he doesn't want to answer those questions. And consequently, he's spouting a lot of nonsense and basically avoiding scrutiny now until September.
Well, that's the thing. You know, he does his little speech the other day and he basically banned anybody from asking questions of him afterwards. You know, you can't continue with that, surely to heavens. And, you know, speaking of his defence policy, it looks as though his old mate Keir Starmer has sort of handed him a hospital pass, hasn't he? Because he'd come out yesterday. We were talking to Andrew Fox, who's a defence expert earlier on in this hour, who basically said this package of defence measures from Keir Starmer is too little. And it's basically a complete and utter dud. It's not worth the paper it's written on.
There's so many aspects to this, and it's a subject that I feel very passionate about because I was a military child myself. You know, my dad was in the army. And so one of the things that is really upsetting and people just don't talk enough about is the standard of accommodation for military families. I lived on many army bases in many, many army homes throughout my childhood. And I know how tough it is for the families of military personnel. And the fact is that yet again, the money that was meant to be going towards refurbishment and updating and all the things that need to be done to these properties that have been so neglected, that have families in them, is being put aside because there's not enough money in the budget. There's barely enough money, well, there isn't enough money for the defence of this country as it is. But the military families are suffering once again with no improvement to their accommodation. It's a national scandal. These people put their lives on the line for us and we can't give them decent accommodation. And I know, I've lived in these properties. I know what I'm talking about. It is an absolute disgrace. And the point is that someone like Andy Burnham, that was a slip-up, wasn't it? Ed Miliband and Andy Burnham. But the point is that Andy Burnham will not tell us what his intentions are with Ed Miliband's mad net zero policies. We know that the money for defence is available if he would just, put in the bin all of the billions and billions of pounds worth of projects that net zero is sucking up over the next 10, 20 years. That's where the money from defence spending can come from.
Well, this is the thing, because it turns out that despite him claiming that it was all very well costed and, we've absolutely worked out precisely how much we can spend and where it's going to come from, that turns out to be completely and utterly untrue. It all kind of unravelled last night, didn't it? And what we do know now is that he's still putting welfare first. He's still paying loads and loads of money out into the welfare budget and basically just neglecting defence.
And what about all this nonsense that we're hearing from Shabama Mahmood suddenly that, the illegal asylum seekers are now going to have to pay £10,000 towards their accommodation?
No, great.
What utter nonsense. Listen, we can't even get student loans repaid by foreign students that come here, take out loans and then go back home with no intention of ever repaying their student loans. How on earth are we going to get illegal asylum seekers to pay for their accommodation that they get, of course, free as soon as they get here? And let's just talk about that for a moment. I mean, we hear today, don't we, that this year alone, we've had over 11,000 boat crossings, 76,000 boat crossings that we know about since this Labour government came to power. What is Andy Burnham saying about that? Absolutely nothing. But Shabama Mahmood's coming out with all this rhetoric, which is meaningless, Mike, because if we don't leave the ECHR, then we hear, don't we, the endless, they've used Article 8, it's their human right to a family life, whatever part of the judicial nonsense that they use. Unless we come out of the ECHR, we cannot return any of these illegal migrants. And it doesn't matter what Shabama Mahmood says about if they commit a crime, they'll never be able to apply for British citizenship. It's all meaningless unless we repeal the Human Rights Act, repeal the Immigration Act, and come out of the ECHR.
Well, we can't even deport criminals. All the countries of Europe, like the Germans are deporting Afghan criminals who have been in prison, sending them back to Afghanistan. We apparently have got 20,000 foreign criminals who were in prison, so they were obviously committing pretty serious crimes. They've been released from prison in order to be deported, but we're not deporting them. So they're just basically roaming around in the streets.
Well, they're lost to the system. That's what's really frightening, is these criminals are lost to the system. We know already, because of this Labour government's inability to get a grip on the prison crisis, to deport the 10,700 foreign nationals that are in prison already, then there's such a pressure on prison places that they are letting prisoners out early, whether that is foreign prisoners or British, British offenders. But the point is, crime is rising, the threat to women and girls is rising, because rapists, sexual assault offenders are all being let out now so early onto the streets. And do you know that the victims often of these crimes are told simply with days before the defendant is released that their abuser is going to be let back out again. And it's all because this government will not build prisons, will not empty the prisons of the people that shouldn't even be there. But again, as I say, none of this will happen, Mike, unless they get a grip on the ECHR and bite the bullet and come out. And we hear, don't we, that Kemi now is saying that the Tories will do it. Well, they didn't do it, did they? They didn't do it for 14 years. And I would say to the British public, do not buy that, because the Tories could have come out of the ECHR years ago when we left, when Brexit happened. They didn't do it.
No, they didn't want to do it. And in fact, they were more responsible for putting more people into more hotels than ever. And now Labour are attempting to remove them from the hotels. But the problem is they're not removing them from the country. We want them out of the hotels, but we don't want them then moving into homes. We've got a little clip here I want to show you. I don't know if you've seen this, because yesterday we saw the piece in The Sun saying that these houses in Shropshire are being given to migrants, £250,000 new builds, right? The government have now said, we shouldn't be putting them in new builds, but it's okay if we put them in, old places or maybe refurbished places. But this is West Berkshire, right? And this is a councillor showing you round some very nice accommodation, which you and I would probably quite like to live in, which is for migrants. Have a look.
Sorry,
number 4.
It used to be our offices. We used to have an office here for some of the social workers, but now, because it was redundant, we've actually turned it into some converted flats. These flats are amazingly finished out. They've got some beautiful carpets, they've got all fitted units, and 4 of them are actually 3-bedroom. So we've got 4 3-bedroom and one bedroom. These are going to be for both Afghan, Ukrainian. This is great for them because at the moment they're living in hostels and hotels, and we don't want that to happen in West Berkshire. So to get them into actually these sorts of accommodations, and such a lovely finish as well. It's beautiful. If you can look around, you can see the light in here. It's amazing. And we've got heat source pumps and actually proper cool radiators, heated radiators in the bathrooms, showers and baths. It's a really lovely finish. And we're going to have EV charging points outside for the car parking, which is, again, the latest innovations.
Isn't that nice? Lovely light, beautiful views, fitted kitchens and appliances all provided for free, and, believe it or not, EV charging points in case they've got a free electric car they want to charge up. Isn't that nice?
Well, how does that make me feel? How does that make the residents of Runcorn and Helsby feel? Hardworking people that see that their homes aren't, a lot of people that I deal with, their homes aren't that nice.
No.
They need updating. And yet we've got brand new accommodation like that. And that councillor, what planet are these people on, Mike?
Yeah.
What planet are they on that they think that the British taxpayer is going to be happy and share her joy at this wonderful accommodation that she clearly openly said is going to be for Afghans and other illegal asylum seekers? It's not acceptable. The British people are fed up now of unfairness, and the residents of Runcorn and Helsby, oh my goodness, they come through across into the threshold into my office on a daily basis saying how fed up they are with the unfairness now that is this country. And look, we're being laughed at by these migrants because we've seen some footage over the last couple of days, haven't we, about them watching them throw their papers in the channel again and coming here and saying this is the end of England. We have arrived. We are taking over. What are we doing? We're doing nothing about that. We are having an invasion of people from a different culture. We are housing them in those sort of, in that beautiful accommodation that we've just seen the video of. If anybody complains, they are jailed. British citizens complain about this situation, they're arrested, they're put into jail. The government is clamping down on freedom of speech. We've got more and more digital ID issues and surveillance stopping us speaking out. Our country is slowly becoming bankrupt because of this problem. And all the time, this Labour government and the Conservative government before it are doing nothing about this invasion of another culture taking over this country. The British people are absolutely tearing their hair out because nobody is listening to them.
No, exactly right. And we've been hearing from people around the country this morning, sending us messages. There's messages coming in from Plymouth where they say the same thing is happening. Migrants are being given accommodation ahead of other people. And one woman who said that she complained about it was threatened with being taken off the housing list because she was a racist, for saying something. Same with, I think it's Northamptonshire Council, the same. It's happening all over the country. And I know that Reform have got the grip of now quite a few councils, but hopefully Reform won't be doing that in the councils that they run.
Listen, it's insidious. It's a problem that has crept up, that has been allowed to creep up. And now in places like Runcorn, we have multiple houses of multiple occupation are dotted around that now, we've got these illegal asylum seekers, as I say, completely different culture, completely different attitude. We have groups of young men hanging around, watching children film. We've had reports recently in the last 2 weeks of them filming children and saying, oh, well, they just want to show people back at home how children play in this country. What utter nonsense.
Really?
I have people coming in and saying they're frightened to let their children out of their sight. So yes, this is going on up and down the country. And look at that wonderful accommodation that we saw there with that councillor, so proud of it. But I come back to my point about the military families. There's no funding for them, and yet there's there's funding for these illegal asylum seekers to go into that level of accommodation, it's not acceptable that our British troops, that their families who sacrifice so much in order for the mum or the dad to be part of the British Army and the defence of this country, to be put into substandard accommodation when illegal asylum seekers are getting top-notch accommodation that, quite frankly, Mike, looking at that, looks very nice. I wouldn't mind living there myself.
Well, I wouldn't mind a nice three-bedroom flat with a big open window onto the countryside and, you know, some newly fitted... Because the other problem is that they're getting all this stuff for free and presumably they're not working, so they'll be getting their council tax paid, presumably they'll be getting their electricity bill paid, their water bill paid, and, you know,
Yes.
when does it end? It's kind of open-ended.
And all the while, as we said, you know, energy bills, again, the price cap's gone up by another 13%. So the hardworking taxpayers of places like Runcorn are still having to pay their energy bills. And yet this lot coming in, getting absolutely everything for free. The fact is, Mike, we are being bankrupted as a country. So, you know, that we are losing our culture. We are losing control of our finances. We have a government that doesn't have the backbone to bin the mad net zero policies and start paying for the defence of this country. And we are, you know, in a situation at the moment where the feeling out there on the streets is one of, you know, is one of concern, deep concern. And I feel that the British people, it's not going to take much for them to say, you know what, we really have had enough and we're not going to put up with this anymore. You know, we've got a long, hot summer coming up. Let's hope that there's no, you know, no issues out there that cause the public to show us how fed up they are.
Yeah, no, indeed. Manchester mayoral election coming up. You've named your candidate, Sian Astley. I don't know if you know her.
Cyan. She likes to be called Cyan.
Oh, is it Cyan?
Apparently her mum forgot the little, I want to call it an umlaut, but I can't remember the English word, on the I. And so she's been Cyan, apparently. But she's she's a really strong candidate, a strong woman. So, you know, I'm a big advocate for more strong women in politics. But yeah, she's a real asset to the reform lineup, if you like. So I shall be doing my best to get out and about and support Cyan in her campaign. I think the Labour candidate's been declared, the Green candidate. I'm not quite sure who the Tory candidate is, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting election. But of course, let's not forget this election has been brought about by Andy Burnham and his own vanity project. And I believe it's going to cost the residents of Greater Manchester £5 million to run this mayoral election.
Yeah, I know. It's a ridiculous expense, isn't it? Absolutely mad. I'm quite surprised in a way they didn't just slot somebody else in and say, oh, this is Andy's replacement, because, you know, we don't believe in democracy anymore. We're just going to sort of, you know, hand the mayoral job to somebody else. But the thing about the Andy Burnham sort of phenomenon, if you like, I suppose, is that he has got quite a big majority, or he did have when he won the Manchester mayoral race the last time around. So, I mean, it's quite a big mountain for Reform to climb, because you know what people are like. They're going to say, oh, if Reform don't win it, it's another blow to Nigel Farage, because that's what they keep. That seems to be the kind of the current mantra of the mainstream media.
Well, yeah, but, you know, it's not going to take long, Mike, I think, for the whole Andy Burnham bubble to burst. Andy Burnham, you know, I've been saying, you know, he is... he believes in socialism on steroids, if you like. You know, his mantra will be to increase taxation. His mantra will be to increase the benefit system. He will do nothing about curbing the benefit system. It's going to be a quite different role for him as Prime Minister, if that's where he ends up, when it seems that that's where he is going to end up, than it was to be the Mayor of Greater Manchester. And also, I should point out, as a Northern girl myself, that people in the North actually don't regard Andy Burnham as this great saviour and king of the North. People around Manchester are fully aware that it was people like Howard Bernstein and Sir Richard Leese that built Manchester into what it is today. Andy Burnham simply came in and rode on the back of that wave, if you like. Listen, the child deprivation in Greater Manchester is still at 47%. There's a huge problem in Manchester when you look beyond the glossy apartment blocks, which, by the way, are mainly empty. So, yeah, Manchester's an interesting one. It's very easy to look at the glossy side of it, but there's a lot of issues in Manchester, which Andy Burnham did absolutely nothing to fix. Andy Burnham is about keeping state control over people. That's where people like Andy Burnham get their votes from. And all this business about moving number 10 to the north. Look, he's not President Trump. He can't run this country from his, Mar-a-Lago estate equivalent up in the north. The fact is, if he's going to be Prime Minister, Parliament is in London, and he needs to be in London, and he needs to be facing scrutiny from the opposition, which is clearly something that he's not welcoming at the moment. But look, Andy Burnham talks about building council houses. Well, every government has talked about building more housing, hasn't he? But I tell you what, this Labour government will not do under Andy Burnham, and that is let any council house ownership, council houses become owned by the residents, which is all about upward social mobility. He will stamp on that. They will make it very, very difficult for people to actually buy their own council houses, because that is not what Andy Burnham is about. His type of socialism is about more state control. It's about public ownership. It is about surveillance. It is about stopping freedom of speech. This is an absolute disaster for this country. And God help us all if he does put somebody like Ed Miliband in as a chancellor. Well, we might as well all pack up and just go under a stone until the next general election is called.
Oh, I know, because you won't be able to afford to heat your house. You won't be able to afford to do anything, basically, and you won't be able to fly anywhere, probably. So you won't be able to even go on holiday. But that's
but also
the problem.
And on that, just quickly on that note, Mike, he will increase taxes. Already they're talking about increasing taxes in, again, this sort of stealth way. They're talking about corporate capital gains tax going up, but in a way that people won't notice, a very clever way. So at the moment, capital gains on when you sell something is just on the difference of the price from when you owned it to when you sell it. But now they're talking about if you inherit an asset, the capital gains will go right back to the original purchase price that maybe your parents or whoever bought a house for. This is going to raise billions of pounds, and people are not even going to really potentially understand or see this tax coming in until it's too late, and they think, oh my goodness, how is it that I've just lost thousands of pounds or through the taxation system? That he will increase taxes left, right, and centre. This man is an absolute disaster for growth. He's a disaster for for jobs. I mean, what has he talked about when it comes to young people? This Labour government has absolutely decimated the labour market for young people. And in fact, on Thursday, tomorrow, in the Chamber, I have a business debate. I have actual Chamber time to talk about the link between post-16 education and deprivation, and the fact that the opportunities for young people now have been utterly destroyed by this government. And he's not talking about any of that. That's what people care about. People care about embracing our young talent, of which I have so much in Runcorn, but matching it up with job opportunities. Post-16 education is a disgrace in my constituency. I have one sixth form only in Runcorn, only for over 2,000 young people aged 16 to 18. I have one sixth form. How can they be upwardly socially mobile if there's no access to further education?
No, I know. Absolutely ridiculous. Completely mad. But listen, great to see you, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. The MP for Runcorn and Helsby, of course, as I said. I got it right. Maybe if there was a Mar-a-Lago of the North, they'd call it Manca-Lago or something like that. But we shall see. Sarah Poachin from Reform giving us her view on Andy Burnham. We're going to get Baroness Theresa Coffey's view on him as well. She's a former Deputy Prime Minister. First, let's have a look at the poll that we've got today. The poll today is because England are playing the World Cup. Who do you think is going to win the World Cup? Don't forget, of course, Mark Littlewood has got his World Cupper show that comes up at midday. Once again today, he'll be looking ahead to the game. England 26%, Mexico 12%, France 52%, which is probably about right because they look like the favourites. And Dr. Congo, as Mark calls them, 10%. We shall see. Game kicks off at 5 o'clock this very afternoon. Let's say a very good morning now, though, to Baroness Teresa Coffey. She wants to talk about Andy Burnham as well. Teresa, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to speak to you.
Good to see you. You've just heard Sarah Poachin there talking about the nonsense of this government and how Andy Burnham doesn't seem to like to talk about very much of any substance so far, anyway, as much as we've seen of him. And he seems to be sort of playing what I'm calling a kind of parody northerner. It's almost as though, every chance he gets, he's mentioning the lyrics of Oasis or the Smiths or somebody like that. He's trying to kind of paint himself as this man of the people that doesn't wear a shirt and tie. He likes to wear a T-shirt. It's all very kind of performative, it seems to me. What do you make of it?
Well, he is a northerner. I grew up in the north as well. And to give Andy some credit, he does have a way of connecting with the public, which not many politicians have. And in fact, probably the last person to have such connection was Boris Johnson. Yeah. So it's a case of how do you get your message through? I think what will become more challenging for Andy Burnham as he finally takes control of the country is people might see number 10 North as a bit of a gimmick. I actually can see something quite interesting there. He's been a cabinet minister before, admittedly a long time ago, so nothing will be quite the same, but he will already be aware of some of the challenges of trying to get the Whitehall machinery moving to deliver the Prime Minister's intentions. But, dare I say it, I think a lot of the credit that he's taken for himself has been built on the shoulders of others, including things like the Conservative government funding the expansion of Metrolink. That's one of the key reasons why Greater Manchester and Manchester itself has expanded so much. But I'm not going to rubbish a man before he gets into office.
No, well, he could do that for himself, by the way. I mean, there was a message put out on Twitter the other day by Christopher Snowden from the IEA, who said Andy Burnham appears to be in a race to get himself to be the most unpopular Prime Minister before he actually gets the job. Because the trouble is that the more people find out about him, the less popular he appears to be.
Well, I think it's important that he does expose himself to scrutiny sooner rather than later. Otherwise, that veneer will start to be like, well, what is he now hiding?
Yeah.
And, I can understand there are different strategies early on of trying to get your message out without it being completely unraveled before he's even walked into number 10. But that won't last. The way the whole timetable has been done is to help the Labour Party, to help a Labour government. I'm not sure why it's taken so long. There's no reason I can see genuinely why it's taken so long for Labour Party nominations to close. But what it does do is give him a summer of being able to do X, Y, Z. He'll only have 2, perhaps 3 Prime Minister's questions before he goes into Labour Party conference. And if he has actually caught the wave, who knows, we may have an election in October. So, there's an opportunity for the Labour Party that's been done by this timetable. But he needs to start answering questions sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think there is a good chance he'll have an election because I think he'll take the view that the economy is probably going to get quite a bit worse. The figures on all manner of things like unemployment are likely to get worse. The growth figures aren't really going anywhere. He's already, by the looks of it, been handed a bit of a poisoned chalice, or a hospital pass, as some people are calling it, by Keir Starmer over this defence plan, which appears to have a £5 billion black hole in it, apparently, which is sort of his parting gift, isn't it?
Well, that's right. And, if the budget isn't due till November, what a better way to try and avoid a very, very difficult budget by going to the country early. But he's set out a few different ways of how he wants to do this. He has been consistent in seeking more devolution. I think some of the scrutiny on quite what some of that has achieved is missing. I know when I used to run welfare, there was a keenness to expand more, but without some of the detail of how actually outcomes would improve. So it's been a mixed element there, but nevertheless. He is fully embracing the devolution. It is something that in the Conservatives in the past have also embraced, particularly under George Osborne, when he was very keen to have mayors. So there's how can I put it? Burnham isn't entirely untested, but we don't really know what he's going to do. I'm afraid the speech on Monday, at least half of it could have been read out by Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
So there's nothing differential there. And so as a consequence, we need to try and get to the bottom of his detail as quickly as possible. And of course, his choice of Chancellor is going to be the most important decision he makes on the 20th of July.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about devolution for me is that the only thing that you know for sure that it does is it ends up costing us more money. You know, when we built a Scottish Parliament and then filled it full of MSPs, and when we built a building for the civil servants who all sitting down in Leith Docks, you know, that was more money. Same goes for Cardiff Bay, same goes for Northern Ireland and Stormont and all the rest of it, you know. And I mean, I don't mind if it works for them to say, right, let's try and improve the likelihood of young people getting jobs in a particular area by devolving some part of the Department of Employment. You know, but for me, if you're going to do that, you have to take the money from somewhere else, which never seems to happen, you know, because the number of, I was reading just the other day, the number of civil servants has gone up 73% in the last 10 years alone. Now, if you're going to remove some of them, or you're going to get rid of some of them and replace them with people in other parts of the country, fine. But my suspicion is that basically devolution means more public money, bigger government, and just a more sort of fragmented state, if you like.
Well, I think that's certainly true. And I do recall in the last Labour government, there was a referendum about creating a North East Parliament, a North East Assembly, and the people rejected it because they didn't see the point of it.
Right.
So there is it'd be interesting to see what further devolution he's planning to give to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. You rightly point out, Mike, what has improved? And the answer is, when it comes to educational attainment, both Wales and Scotland are way behind England now. So it is not necessarily doing things for the better outcomes for people across the country. And while the Barnett formula is still in place, and I don't see that changing under any administration, of course, we will end up still having the amount spent per child in England is going to be less than in other parts of the UK. So it's I think he needs to be careful what he wishes for. He's got a lot of MPs who are very nervous about their seats. Only just got in unexpectedly, many of them in 2024. And while there's room, if you like, to lose some of those, he's got to be careful not to lose sufficiently that he ends up being constrained in a coalition. While that might suit some of his policy agenda, he won't want to be the Prime Minister that comes in this way that then loses the next election, because then his premiership will come to a very quick end.
Yes, indeed. I don't think it's looking great for him, to be honest. But there we are. Baroness Teresa Coffey, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. We'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure. Baroness Teresa Coffey, the former Deputy Prime Minister and Health Secretary under Liz Truss. She was the first Deputy Prime Minister in history in this country. Bizarrely, of course, the Labour government and the Labour Party haven't managed to come together and create themselves a female leader. I mean, they took an awfully long time to figure out what a woman was. There's now calls for Andy Burnham to make 50% of the people in his cabinet women, which is kind of ironic given, as I say, that they didn't know exactly what a woman was until relatively recently. Keir Starmer didn't know what one was until the Supreme Court actually gave him an indication of what they thought a woman was. And then he suddenly went, oh yeah, I can see what a woman is now. Coming up in the next hour, we've got loads more to do. You're going to do my meltdown as well, and we're going to hear more about this ridiculous business of giving free accommodation to migrants who have come here, sometimes illegally. Extraordinary stuff. First, though, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Starmer's finally shuffling off after his defence master plan, slapping on £15 billion for drones, hypersonics, and a fancy hybrid navy, while quietly carving out a £5 billion black hole for whoever follows. Brilliant timing, mate. The knob of the North's basically measuring the curtains for number 10, though he'll apparently keep popping back to Manchester, like it's a long commute, promising radical devolution and fixing our broken politics. King Charles has sensibly decided the freshly refurbished Buckingham Palace isn't for living in. Smart man. Why rattle around in a £370 million money pit when you can dodge the drama? England are smashing it at the World Cup. fans behaving excellently abroad, naturally. While at home, we're still rowing about NHS maternity reports, migrant rules, and whether ditching maths tests for diversity was peak civil service genius. Laters, tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Still saying rowing instead of rowing. Never mind. He's also wearing a Dr. Congo t-shirt, which is, of course, in reference to the England game coming up later on tonight, 5 o'clock, and to see whether or not they can get themselves into the last 16 of the World Cup. It is, of course, something that we've got a poll on today as well. We're asking who you think is going to win the World Cup. And most of you think France. 52% of you think France. 26% of you think England. 12% Mexico. 10% Dr. Congo. Mark Littlewood, of course, at 12 o'clock with the brilliant World Cupper show all the way from Mallorca, where he'll be telling you about what happened last night. The French looked very good, by the way. And also, of course, Kelvin McKenzie at 10 o'clock with his show. Not sure who he's got on, actually, today. I don't know if you know, Elena, do you?
I'll have a look.
Okay. I'm sure it'll be an absolute blockbuster of a show, as it normally is. And one of his first guests is usually me. So all you do is you switch over to UK Live Online. If you don't know how to do that yet, there's usually a link on the chat line here on my channel, the Mike Graham Show on YouTube. But of course, you can also just put it in to the YouTube search engine, UK Live Online. You can find it there. And as we go, we'll be adding more and more shows coming up over the course of the next few weeks and months. Very exciting times. Very exciting times. But right now, though, let's have a bit of a meltdown, shall we? Now, those of you who have been paying attention will know that we've been talking quite a bit about migrants this morning, not least because yesterday it became clear from a story in The Sun that there were a whole series of houses over in Shropshire, £250,000 new builds, right, which were going to be given to migrants. 83 migrants are going to be moving into 21 houses in a place called Stoke Heath in Shropshire. As a result of that story being published, it turns out that Shabana Mahmood and the Labour government said, oh, actually, that's a bit of a mistake. We shouldn't be giving new build houses to migrants to live in for free, because that's not really fair on the rest of the population. And apparently there's 6,000 people on the housing list in that particular part of Shropshire, who I imagine would be pretty miffed at the fact that they can't get themselves into a place because of the fact that it's been given to migrants, and specifically given to migrants because that's the way the council has decided to do it. However, a spokesman for the Home Office said this decision obviously will be affecting other parts of the country going forward, but it will not affect the place in Shropshire where these migrants are going to be housed, Stoke Heath. 83 migrants moving into 21 houses. Well, it gets worse apparently, right? Because today we discover that in West Berkshire, the same thing is going on. Now, what you're about to see is a councillor in West Berkshire boasting about the fact that they're going to house a load of Afghans and a load of Ukrainians in some rather nice done-up properties. Have a look.
It used to be our offices. We used to have an office here for some of the social workers, but now, because it was redundant, we've actually turned it into some converted flats. These flats are amazingly finished out. They've got some beautiful carpets, they've got all fitted units, and 4 of them are actually 3-bedroom. So we've got 4 3-bedroom and 1 bedroom. These are going to be for both Afghan, Ukrainian. This is great for them because at the moment they're living in hostels and hotels, and we don't want that to happen in West Berkshire. So to get them into actually these sorts of accommodations, and such a lovely finish as well. It's beautiful. If you can look around, you can see the light in here. It's amazing. And we've got heat source pumps and actually proper cool radiators, heated radiators in the bathrooms, showers and baths. It's a really lovely finish. And we're going to have EV charging points outside for the car parking, which is, again, you know, the latest innovations.
I mean, I don't know who she's selling this idea to, right? That we should have this great, beautiful, lovely series of apartments, right? 3 bedrooms in one case, a couple of cases, sometimes 1 bedroom. Lovely lights, very light, she's saying. Top of the range appliances being given for free. Presumably, because it's unfurnished currently, there will be furniture supplied because they won't be able to afford to buy any. Their electricity bill will be paid. They've got a heat pump, apparently, which is mega expensive. They also have a charging point for an EV, just in case they get a free car, because they won't be able to afford to buy one. And how long does it go on for? Is it sort of open-ended lease? Most people can't afford to move house right now because of the state of the stamp duty tax, which has been put on by Richard III, right? Most people can't afford to move into a place that they'd like to if it was bigger because they can't afford it. And most people, actually, if they live in a flat which they either have just bought or are renting, maybe can't afford to have it done up, can't afford to have things fixed, can't afford to have things upgraded. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this woman, this Berkshire councillor, West Berkshire councillor, seems to be kind of goading everybody into going, oh, isn't it great? Isn't it fantastic that they're getting such top-of-the-range equipment? Isn't it marvellous that they're living in such lovely, luxury kind of newly fitted-out homes when ordinary people are struggling, when there are so many homeless people, when there are people waiting on housing lists for some form of accommodation? This is so unfair, says Cindy. What about the British people? Well, what about them? Exactly. And it turns out that this is going on not just in Shropshire, not just in West Berkshire, but it's also going on in Plymouth. We had a message from somebody down there on our Substack. And then, of course, it's also happening in Northamptonshire as well, we've been told. And it sounds to me as though it's probably going on up and down the country. Denise says, this is insane. I'm furious. Well, of course you are. It's absolutely and utterly ridiculous. Meanwhile, we hear from Shabana Mahmood that she's going to change the rules on people's right to remain in this country and that they can't stay here just because they've had families during the time that they've been living here illegally. And it all sounds very good in practice, doesn't it? That they'll basically get deported even if they've got families. Article 8 of the Human Rights Act says that if you've got a right to family life, you can't be deported. And we're going to be talking very shortly to Laura Perrins about a case of the Rochdale grooming gang ringleader called Shabir Ahmed, who apparently can't be deported because he's got a right to a family life in this country. Well, how much longer are we supposed to put up with all this rubbish? How much longer are we supposed to be using housing in this country to make it possible for people who come here illegally to stay here and to live here for free? How much more of it is going to be going on? And how long is it going to be going on for? I mean, if they move an Afghan family into that 3-bedroom house, how long are they going to live there for? Are they going to be given a car so they can charge it at the EV point? It's absolutely incredible. Unbelievable. Something's got to be done, surely, to heavens. Let's talk now to Laura Perrins, lawyer, of course, over in Ireland, Irish-born barrister turned writer, co-founder of the Conservative Woman. Laura, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. You can hear me okay?
I can indeed, absolutely, no problem at all. I mean, we're going to talk, of course, about Shabir Ahmed, why he can't be deported. But before we do that, I mean, this situation with the housing being given to migrants who are coming to this country seems to be like a sort of a I don't know, it's like a sort of a bomb waiting to go off in a way, because people are absolutely getting very, very angry about what we're seeing, not least councillors from local areas like Plymouth, like Shropshire, like West Berkshire, as we've just seen, sort of boasting about the fact that, oh, look at this top of the range stuff that we're giving away, it's all great, you know, it's wonderful, it shows how good-hearted we are. People are going, hang on a minute, how long is this going to go on for?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd almost think they're doing it on purpose. I think it's on the internet. It's called, you know, a form of trolling, isn't it? Look, I mean, what can you say? It's clearly it doesn't even pass, you know, the basic test of fairness, and this is why people are just getting sort of angrier and angrier. I wonder how you get out of bed every morning, to be honest, Mike, with sort of always a tsunami of ridiculous stories like that. I mean, you can only imagine the amount of people that you could think you could sell it on the private market, right? You could reduce the price, put it on for key workers, say nurses and teachers, or you could just take it into the general government housing stock, and then for that to be allocated again by people who have actually been in the country for more than 10 seconds. Look, you know, I think what's frustrating is that it's so obviously wrong. to the majority of people, and yet it just continues to go on.
Right.
And this is why I think the core Labour voters, working class voters, are really angry with their own party. But they just seem to, as I say, it just seems to just continue on. I mean, it's difficult it is deeply frustrating. You try and exercise your vote democratically, saying I don't agree with this, and it just continues on.
It does. Because, I mean, unlike the Rochdale story we're about to talk about, it's not about the law, this necessarily. There's no law being made that says that we can give houses to immigrants and to asylum seekers, because we don't need to pass a law. It's just literally kind of in the gift, I guess, of the council locally to do it. And there's plenty of people, unfortunately, running councils and working in councils, this cohort of kind of do-gooders, who think that this is the right thing to do without knowing the consequences.
Yeah, well, for some reason I think it's more to do with them feeling really great about themselves than anything at all. As you say, the excuse now that we're made to do this by Europe, or the European Convention made me do this. In fairness, the British government doesn't have that excuse anymore. I mean, Ireland are locked into an EU migration pact, so. Over this side, there are certainly they can make their excuses, but like, what's the excuse now? You did Brexit. There was some economic cost to that, I think. Parliament is totally sovereign over there, and yet this thing goes on. And as you said, it's relation to housing, which is so fundamental. And then they will turn around, a while later and go, God, I wonder why are so many young people leaving? And no one gets married anymore. Nobody's having any children anymore. Well, why do you think? I mean, they can't buy anywhere to start a family with, because you've given it to, as I said, somebody else who's been here for 30 seconds. Look, it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is. And as I say, at what point will they realise that the do-goodery, if you want to call it that, is actually harming the cohesion of the nation? We used to hear from Keir Starmer all the time, we should avoid dividing the nation, and then these people from Reform are all dividing the nation. Well, no, it's government policy that's dividing the bleeding nation,
Yeah, well, what would be interesting to do, and I don't want to give your researchers more work, is actually see what political leanings those councils are. If this is going on in a number of councils, who holds the councils, somebody has made that decision somewhere, and are they Reform councils, or you would assume not,
right.
But maybe there's a hangover. Are they Lib Dem? Are they Green? That's what you need to find out next.
Yes. Well, I did ask Sarah Pochin, actually, who was here, the Reform MP for Runcorn and Helsby. I would assume that there's no Reform councils handing out these kinds of accommodations. And she didn't quite answer it, so she may not know.
Yeah.
But I'd be absolutely staggered if it was the case, or at least if it had happened in the past, that they hadn't completely and utterly reversed it. Because, again, with the law, I suppose, in place in something like that, if you become a tenant, they've now, I think Labour have now made it more difficult to evict people. So if you wanted to reverse it, you might not be able to.
Yeah, it's different. Again, you need to know what rules or laws have made this allocation possible, and if you can change it, how do you go about changing it? Is there perhaps there's a time limit on them being in temporary accommodation? But whatever way you look at it, it's clearly, I mean, why they're getting the new bills. I mean, like, it would be funny if it were not so serious. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
The other thing that people think is ridiculous is what we're going to talk about now, and the Shabir Ahmed, this ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gangs. He's due for release on licence this week, but apparently he can't be deported because of the Immigration Act of 1971, according to this. So tell us why that is.
Yeah, well, this was, I mean, I think it's been all over the news. It was on, I think, Newsnight. Oh, I shouldn't mention that last night. But this goes back all the way to 2012, when he, along with 9 men, were convicted of incredibly serious offences, I think, against children at Liverpool Crown Court. We shouldn't forget that, what he actually was convicted of. In fact, I think he faced 2 trials. And he was found guilty at Manchester Crown Court of raping and sexually abusing a girl for more than a decade. In fact, I think that very young girl actually had his child. And the prosecutor at the time said he treated his victim as a possession, which he used for his own sexual gratification. medication. She said he had been a violent and controlling man who had abused the girl on almost a weekly basis. She tried to make him stop, but it was to no avail. The detective after the trial said, just so we know what we're dealing with, said that we already knew Ahmed was an integral part of the Rochdale grooming case. So it wasn't just, his single offence or his offences against a single girl. He was the kingpin in the much larger grooming case. And now we can now say this horrific campaign of abuse began many years ago with the systemic rape of this one victim. So Ahmed was one of 9 men from Rochdale who were found guilty of exploiting girls as young as 13 at 2 takeaway restaurants in the Haywood area of Rochdale. So he was convicted. He has served his time. He was stripped of his British citizenship. I think he came over from, he arrived from Pakistan before 1973. He's lived here for, decades. And because of that, he is protected from deportation by a provision in that act that exempts Commonwealth citizens who arrived in the UK before the 1973. So if you were a Commonwealth citizen, which he was, and he arrived in Britain before 1973, he cannot be removed. As I said, his citizenship was stripped after a very lengthy and expensive legal battle, but that they actually managed to do. I think that's important symbolically. So he's now a Pakistan citizen, which means technically he should be able to be removed. Usually you can't remove somebody and make them stateless, but he could be removed. But it seems that you have this act from 1973. Now, the interesting thing again about this, Mike, is that people say, well, that's it, it's a loophole. Well, I'm sure you can pass a law to change the act then.
Yeah.
It's an act of Parliament, so
Sure.
you go back to Parliament and say, right, well, we need to now change the law so that this, you can be deported even if you arrived from the Commonwealth before 1973. So, because now, currently, the Home Office have told me, so remember, this guy is going back to Oldham. He'll be living there with the victims, who you assume most of them have stayed in the area. And the Home Office are giving us reassurance. He says on his release, he will be on the sex offenders register for life, reassuring, ordered to stay away from his victims, banned from contacting any child or young person. That'll be hard to police, as well as facing strict curfews and restriction zones. His every movement will be tracked. This isn't going to be cheap. Forced to wear an electronic tag, and should he breach his conditions, he will be immediately locked up. Well, hopefully those conditions, that's what we're left with, will be imposed. But obviously a normal country after splitting or stripping of the citizenship would have him deported. That's, again,
you would think.
that would be the normal reaction.
Are there any sort of parallels here with Shamima Begum? Because she, if you remember, was stripped of her citizenship as well. And then she was told, or at least I think we were told by the Bangladeshi government, that they didn't believe she was a Bangladeshi citizen, so she couldn't be sent back there. So she is effectively stateless, I think. And so,
well, did she have her citizenship stripped? I wasn't sure on that. You cannot do it if they remain stateless. That I do know.
Yeah, I mean maybe
actually,
maybe that was the issue, that they couldn't do it because they were saying if we strip her of her citizenship, she then becomes a Bangladeshi citizen. But Bangladesh, I think, said no, she's never been a citizen of Bangladesh because her father moved to Britain and she was born in Britain and therefore she's a British citizen. So it's a similar kind of confusion, isn't it?
Well, this is where we can have our debate. I don't think it's fair to compare the two. Obviously, what she did was horrific, but she was a lot younger, and I just think she's a good case of why 14 or 15-year-olds should be completely ignored and are totally clueless, and well, in her case, commit a horrific mistake. I think there is actually maybe an argument for her returning to Britain. She was born and bred there, but it just shows how easily teenagers can be influenced by the most horrific agendas. Therefore, the idea that you then give them the vote at 18 or believe them when they say, if they were female, when they turn around and say, actually, I'm male, they should be just completely ignored.
So this guy Ahmed basically is not capable of being deported on the grounds that this loophole says, having been stripped of his citizenship, he can't go there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at the act in detail, but it's obviously a very old act, and no doubt will have something to do with these were, in fairness, these were Commonwealth citizens at the
Yeah.
time. They've come over to Britain. I think he was very young,
Mm.
but as I said, they've successfully stripped him of his citizenship, which is something. But it seems he can't be deported. Well, it's an act of parliament. I mean, you bring in another act of parliament and say,
Yeah.
right, well, we're getting rid of this rule, and send them back. Look, on the other hand, the conditions seem strict. The key thing is, if this is what we're left with, that those conditions are enforced, because there were reports, I certainly read in the paper, of men who were convicted of these very serious offences, once they're released from prison, threatening the families,
Yes.
threatening their victims. They still hold a lot of power within those communities,
Mm.
and so those conditions should be very strictly enforced. And if there's any breach of them, he should be immediately recalled to prison.
Yes. Well, we've heard stories in the past, haven't we, of young women within recent times whose perpetrators have been put away for a few years, and then they've come back out, and they've literally seen them walking around in the community, and they see them, and they can walk into a shop, and there he is, or they walk around a corner, and there's the guy. I mean, it shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen.
Well, look, you can't, the only way to avoid that would be put them under a curfew 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I'd do that. That would suit me.
Well, yeah. Well, yes, I know. I think yes. Well, that is definitely tempting. Although again, very expensive. Look, they clearly should be deported. He sacrificed his right to stay, to first of all to be a British citizen. Secondly, to stay there. But now we're left with this release. I mean, why they're released, after committing those crimes, that's the other argument, is should the sentences actually be longer.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, they're wandering around in these communities, and you wonder also how much social censure they are subjected to within their own community. And I'm only speculating now, because in for most people, if you're committed of that offence, you're dead socially, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's it. You can wander around, but no one, those offences are so serious that you are basically dead socially. That may not happen to Mr. Shabir Ahmed, and so therefore the conditions that are imposed on him by the Home Office have to be rigorously enforced. But of course, they're enforced by the police force that still have questions to answer in terms of, did they turn a blind eye initially to this grooming?
Yeah.
So, you're by the police force, who no doubt have undergone hours of DEI training. So you're dependent on the police, you're dependent on the Home Office. It's not ideal.
It really isn't, and the Home Office is riddled. It would appear to me to be riddled with people who don't know what they're doing, whose jobs seemingly are not being done properly. I mean, we've got another story today, and again, I'm not trying to conflate the two, but they're making, as a result of this new sentencing act, they're going to be letting more people out who have served half their sentence instead of 2/3 of their sentence, or a third maybe, and they're certainly going to be getting let out earlier. And some of them are quite serious criminals. Some of them may have committed murder. Some of them may be rapists. But apparently the Home Office doesn't actually know how many of them are going to be out. They don't have any figures. They don't know who these people are, and they don't therefore know whether they should be let out or not. I mean, it's kind of insane.
Yeah, I mean, it is scary. It's a massive department. Of course, there's a problem. Of course, if they're all working from home, which is an ongoing, which is a
Right.
story that bubbles up. And then there were one or two times where they released the wrong person,
Yes.
right? Where some guy is just pulled out of a cell, and he's told his day has gotten a whole lot better, and he's released. Doesn't really quite know why, and he's wandering around somewhere. That happened once or twice, I remember, in East London, and
Yeah.
they've gotten the wrong guy completely. Now I think they recovered both of those individuals, but yeah, look, I mean, there is serious overcrowding in the prisons, and then there always comes these crunch times where you're told, right, we got to find people to release early. But it seems they've run out of, let's say if the fraud offences, the financial offences, the very low grade offences, that on balance people will just about live with an early release. But once you have to start releasing, the sexual offenders and the rapists, and things like that, it's just, it's just another indication that it's a slow degrading, right, of the civil service. And although I don't like the doomerism, as you guys sometimes say, that nothing works. The prison system doesn't work, the Home Office doesn't work, and as I said, it's just a degrading constantly of this, as I said, the civil service, or well, yeah, Britain as a whole. It's quite depressing. It's like the House of the Parliament, they are literally crumbling and they can't find the money to redo it.
No, they can't find the money to do anything because they're giving it all away to welfare recipients and migrants. I mean, that's basically where we are, unfortunately. So God knows how it's going to go in the next coming weeks and months and years. But I don't think it's anything good. Laura, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Laura Perrin's former founder of the Conservative Woman website, of course, making an awful lot of sense there. But I mean, you do wonder, don't you, how it's possible that we got here. A lot of people are quite angry this morning looking at some of the things. We found out, by the way, thanks to Elena, that the two councils in question, West Berkshire and Shropshire, are both, believe it or not, Lib Dem run. Of course they are, because the Lib Dems think that what they're doing is right. They think that what they should be doing is giving homes to people who, as Laura Perrin said, have only been here 5 minutes, and ignoring people who are either one, homeless, or two, in need of new accommodation because their current accommodation is unsuitable or too small or whatever, And the Lib Dems have got an absolute lock on virtue signalling. That's what they do. And they think that they're doing the right thing. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Incredible. It's already 9:30, 9:31 actually. It's 1st of July, and it's Wednesday. And it's World Cup Day. England are playing tonight at 5 o'clock. We've got a little poll asking who you think is going to win the World Cup. And funnily enough, you don't think it's going to be England. You think it's going to be France, as it looks here. 52% say France, 26% say England, and Dr. Congo comes bottom at 10%, Mexico at 12%. So there we are. No doubt we'll be talking about it later on the Mark Littlewood World Cupper show. Kelvin McKenzie might even be talking about it. He's on at 10, Mark's on at 12. And then we'll be back here, of course, at 7 o'clock in the morning with a new show for Thursday with another great set of guests, including Russell Quirk, who's going to be in doing the papers. Coming up, we're going to speak to Peter McElvenna, who's, I don't think, someone we've spoken to in the past. He's the founder and host of a thing called Hearts of Oak. He's going to talk to us about the transatlantic connection between this government and the Trump government, of course, and how that's all going. Also, the fact that an awful lot of people in America who watch this show, by the way, there's an awful lot of people there that do watch this show, are really puzzled and completely and utterly kind of mystified as to why Britain has suddenly gone down the gurgler. Because it really has, judging by your comments this morning and judging by some of the stories that we're doing as well. Extraordinary stuff. Let's get some news first up, though, with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes Starmer's finally shuffling off after his defence master plan, slapping on £15 billion for drones, hypersonics, and a fancy hybrid navy, while quietly carving out a £5 billion black hole for whoever follows. Brilliant timing, mate. The knob of the North's basically measuring the curtains for number 10, though he'll apparently keep popping back to Manchester, like it's a long commute, promising radical devolution and fixing our broken politics. King Charles has sensibly decided the freshly refurbished Buckingham Palace isn't for living in. Smart man. Why rattle around in a £370 million money pit when you can dodge the drama? England are smashing it at the World Cup. Fans behaving excellently abroad, naturally. While at home, we're still rowing about NHS maternity reports, migrant rules, and whether ditching maths tests for diversity was peak civil service genius. Laters, tigers.
Thanks very much indeed for Edward Hughes there with the news. He's wearing a Dr. Congo shirt. And we say Dr. Congo, obviously, with our tongues firmly in our cheeks. It is DR Congo. I just hate the way it sounds. I just don't like the way it sounds. I don't know why. but all the leading commentators are constantly saying it. We're going to speak to Peter McElvenna in a second, but let's do a few super chats, Elena, shall we? This one from Rachel, who says, "Hi, Mike, just discovered a weird new NHS tactic. I received an appointment letter addressed to my house, but for someone who doesn't even live here. Others have told me it's happened to them too." Now, that is interesting. Because, of course, one of the things that they boast about all the time is, we've reduced the NHS waiting times for the first time now. They're lower than they've ever been in 17 years. That's Starmer, by the way, in case you didn't know. And it's simply not true, because all they've done is they've taken a load of people and chopped their names off the list. A classy northern lass, Sarah Pochin, says Chris, the voice of common sense. She is. And she doesn't bang on about it either. Will says this, knob of the north, 100 ideas but no answers. Yeah, most of the ideas from the knob of the north, they seem to be about promoting himself. You know, like, let's maybe make a poster, was one of his social media posts yesterday. And to which everybody said, why don't you just have an election maybe? Considering that you've literally just assumed the role of Prime Minister without anybody actually voting for you to be the Prime Minister. One from Robert, who says, it's a Lib Dem council in Oxfordshire County Council as well, who have introduced a law banning flying the English or Union flags on a lamppost. Yeah, I know. Well, we spoke to Ryan Bridge about that, didn't we? Who's from Raise the Colours, because it was actually his case in the High Court. And yeah, they ruled that it's illegal now to fly an England flag in England during an England campaign to win the World Cup. You literally couldn't make it up. It's extraordinary, isn't it? But what he did, I think, Ryan Bridge, was he managed to get them to actually agree to, if you're not going to fly an England flag, then you can't fly any flags. So now there are no flags in Oxford because apparently they might upset people. And people wonder what is going wrong in Britain. And when they look at us from across the Atlantic, and I know this from the friends of mine that live there, they get asked all the time, what's going on in Britain? What is happening? Well, let's talk to Peter McElvenna, who's with Hearts of Oak, which bridges apparently the UK and America, the United States of. Peter, very good morning to you.
Mike, it's an honour to join you. Thank you so much.
Very nice to have you on, and the first time, I think. So I don't know how much you hear that sort of particular phrase that, you know, what's going on in Britain, but funnily enough, my sister lives in Connecticut, and she was in a bar in sort of this tiny little town just north of where she lives, outside of New Haven, and this guy said, started talking to her about, you know, the problem in Britain. He says, I hear about it all the time, you know, places is full of Muslims and migrants, and there's socialists running it, and it's a nightmare. And she goes, how do you know all that? And he goes, oh, I watched this guy from London on YouTube. It turned out to be me. So, you know, people are watching this show and going, crikey. So what are you hearing? What do people say to you?
Well, I've ended up going to traveling to the US a lot. I have 3 shows a week and we stream on a lot of US channels, and therefore I get to connect and talk to a lot of Americans. And one of the big things one of the last times over in Texas was November, and then been over more recently. But I discussed with them about the issue of Islamization of the UK and what is happening, and compared it to what was happening in Texas. And they were utterly blown away by how we have allowed the current state to happen. Obviously, the issue of the Gorton and Denton by-election with our 30% Muslim bloc vote, that sort of thing. And I've been talking to them about the rollout of halal. Obviously, we have allowed Sharia courts to happen for 50 plus years. And there are a lot of those issues that I talked to them about, and they were unaware. And then I pointed out, well, it's happening in their back garden. Actually, Dallas and Houston have got the biggest growth of halal food anywhere in the UK, growing at 22% a year. I think Texas as an epicenter for that. And then where I stayed near DFW Airport, they had 2 Sharia courts within 5 miles. Wow. And most Texans were shocked. So I've been able maybe to talk about the situation we have in the UK and say, look, this is pattern recognition. I see what's happening with you. Yes. I've seen what's happening in the UK. Please take a different route. And that's been a lot of my work, certainly in the US in the last year, talking about the Islamization. And Mike, it really all boils down to, and I'm sure many of your viewers would agree, our lack of identity. And America still has that identity where we have abandoned it so much that Andy Burnham puts English down as number 4 on his list of identities. How are we going to do any better if the Prime Minister is embarrassed at
Yeah.
his Englishness living in England.
Right.
So but it all boils down to identity. It boils down to, I think, the collapse of the Church of England. It boiled down to people not knowing what Englishness is. And coming from Northern Ireland, being in London 22, 23 years, I kind of grew up knowing about identity. And yeah, we did have maybe an Irish flag on a flagpole and a Northern Irish flag, but hey, we were proud to fly our flags. We did have some skirmishes over the Troubles in that, but it was that pride in your nation. And then I remember coming to London over 20 years ago, and I was shocked. Didn't celebrate St. George's Day. People didn't have a Union Jack. People didn't celebrate their culture. And many people who were born in part of the UK actually didn't even want to call themselves English. And it was that strange conversation that I've come from a country that loves its heritage and history, and then you come to London, it doesn't. And all of that has made me look at this a little bit differently. And certainly the US still has that love of nation, where I think we are trying to make sure and educate that out of our kids.
Yeah, well, I always say that I lived in New York for 10 years, and you know, when I was there, it was kind of in the 80s, and it was a very immigrant city in the sense that everyone, I mean, they used to say, you know, everybody here's from somewhere else, but they all wanted to be New Yorkers, you know, and their ambition was to kind of, you know, from the Irish who came over to the Italians, to the Jewish people, the people that then came later, they kind of colonized little bits of Queens, and then they moved out a bit further, but they all wanted to have a house and fly an American flag outside of it, you know, and I think that's the difference here. Where we don't really have that. And it's interesting what you said about Texas, because that's almost the kind of attitude that we had about 10 years ago. Because I remember having conversations with people when I did shows over at Talk, and it was like, you know, we've got Sharia courts, and I'd be like, nah, I don't think so. Don't think so, mate, as we now say all the time with the terrible Novak case. And suddenly here we are, you know. But another interesting thing I saw a couple of days ago, and I don't know if you saw this, but there was a sort of viral video from Minneapolis of a lot of people, a lot of Somalians basically celebrating Somalia Day. And I mean, even when I lived in America back then, that would never have been the case. That just would never have happened.
No, Somalia Day, is that a thing? I hope it's not a thing here. It may be. Don't give
don't give them any
ideas. But even if you look at what happened, I know Trevor Phillips talked about this 15, 20 years ago about Islam not integrating something different. He was allowed because he was from the left, because he's black. So he kind of had an ability to maybe make that comment, although he was pillared and attacked. And he's a wonderful journalist, obviously, that stood by what he saw and not by what he was told to say. But even the mass immigration and the turning a blind eye has meant, obviously, I just wrote about this yesterday, about the Met Police and the 4,000 cases they are now looking at. The National Crime Agency, the Met Police have referred it. And they initially talked about 9,000 cases. That was back in October, I think. Now they said there may be 4,000 cases on the grooming gangs. It's taken them 7 months to go through 9,000 cases? Wow, I can't imagine giving that a lot of time. No. But then those 4,000 cases are going to be given to the National Crime Agency. Now, if you look at Operation Stovewood, which is in Rotherham alone, they've had 1,200 cases they've been looking through. It's taken them 12 years. Now, we're going to send 4,000 cases. Imagine how long it's going to take. If that's taken 12 years, then we're looking at 40 years for actually getting an age. It doesn't make sense why we do not see crimes as important and negative and damaging simply because maybe it comes from people that we don't want to get termed racist or Islamophobic. I mean, a crime is a crime. A child is a child. And we need to call that out. And I hope and pray that what happens with this actually gets rid of Sadiq Khan and begins to get justice for those girls. Because, of course, he mocked Susan Hall.
Of course he did. Her. Well, I mean, he more or less denied that there was ever any grooming gang problem in London, didn't he?
Oh, he did. He did. And he mocked and ridiculed her, said he didn't understand the term. Well, now I know why he mocked and ridiculed her, because London has been sitting on the epicenter of this. And when you look at these towns in Rotherham and Rochdale and Telford, and they talk about over 1,000 girls affected, if we've got 9,000 cases that were closed prematurely and 4,000 of those need to get done, the Met Police are stretched to the limit. I've looked at kind of how you might investigate these old crimes, and you're looking at least a team of 4 to really go through. A team of 4, that's 16,000 new people that we need from somewhere. I don't know about you, Mike, but I've certainly seen the cuts in the police and the cuts in anything for civil society. Where are they going to find these 16,000 people? Maybe on the boats coming over. Maybe that's kind of where they would find it, which really fills me with dread. But I don't know where they're coming from.
Well, they're going 2 of the public housing projects in the Lib Dem councils around the country, like the 2 that we've been highlighting this morning, the one in Shropshire that the sun blasted yesterday, and then today West Berkshire, where they're actually boasting about the fact that they're giving property to people who clearly aren't paying for it, and who have come here from Afghanistan and Ukraine. And it's not a race thing, this. It's about, I don't care where you're from. You shouldn't be able to come to this country and be given property. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't think you got a free property in New York. I would love a free property in Texas. No one's going to give me that. So why is there this expectation? Whenever I moved to London, I had to go and rent. I was surprised at the cost of rent compared to Northern Ireland, but hey, that's what you have to pay. If I didn't like it, I could move back. That's kind of, I think, our attitude. But those costs, it's what, 5 billion to house people coming over in those small boats for all the asylum centres. And then we've got foreign aid at 10 billion. We've got migrants getting benefits, which I've read could be over 10 billion easily. But then we've got the green levy's got I think Reform talked about maybe 50 billion easily we could find. That's kind of how you fix this country. And we have this government not knowing what they're doing. Rachel Reeve doing the maths. And of course, they couldn't even find more than 1.5 billion a year for defense. And how that connects us, as you asked at the beginning, that relationship with America, if Britain are not pulling their weight, then in terms of military, then why doesn't America just say, hey, yeah, we're out of NATO. It's your problem. If you're not going to put the money in, we promise we're going to spend, 3.5%. I don't know when we'll ever get up to that point because there's no commitment. And 1.5 billion on drones isn't going to fix it. But it's that our commitment and relationship with each other and saying we will do what we need to do in the world because we are, or are we a first world country, a second world country? I don't know what we are now. But America will do what it does because it has allies. But if we are an ally that doesn't put our hands in our pockets, then I worry what that means for the world in terms of any form of defense.
Yeah, exactly right. Because there's no doubt that Starmer has damaged, possibly not irrevocably, but he's certainly damaged our relationship with America and Donald Trump. And Trump clearly is not happy about the fact that, when he asked Starmer for help in the use of Diego Garcia and he said no, he was like, really? Honestly? And then he just was like, all right, well, we'll just do it without you. And he clearly isn't very keen on Andy Burnham. Neither are we, by the way. But he calls him very liberal and all the rest of it. And did you see that ludicrous thing the other day where Starmer apparently has been telling people that he quite fancies the idea of being the Secretary General of NATO when he finally shuffles off? That would be the final nail in the coffin, you would imagine, right? Trump would just go, that's it, we're out,
Could we not send him ambassador to Democratic Republic of Congo? Maybe
that's a good idea.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Well, in my head, I sort of thought to myself, we'd probably end up in Brussels or something because that's what he loves, isn't it? He's much closer to the European Union than he is to Britain. He understands it better. He doesn't like Britain at all. I don't think he doesn't get people in Britain. He doesn't understand what makes us tick. He doesn't understand why we want to fly a flag or why, we don't like all of these people coming into the country illegally. He just doesn't get it.
But it's true, but I don't think the Americans know how dangerous we are in Britain going from Keir Starmer, who's a vanilla politician, who seemed to be one of the weakest, wettest prime ministers we've had in, I can't remember a worse one, and didn't stand for anything. So obviously someone else was making decisions because I couldn't believe that Keir Starmer made a single decision in his life. And yet we are now going from that to actually someone who is a known far left individual who's much more activist and aggressive on his far left views. And I worry that will put us in the very worst position because at the moment Trump kind of was confused with Starmer. He kind of connected with him. He then backed off the whole issue in free speech. He mocked Starmer. And it's kind of like a love hate that Trump he has a love of Britain. Obviously he's got his mum born in Scotland. He's got his golf club up there. He has a love affair with the UK. And yet Keir Starmer has tried to destroy that at all costs. But yet we are moving towards a known opponent of the US, of that special relationship. And I worry, I mean, you mentioned on the defense, on the Dea Garcia, weirdly, we are still the only European country that allowed America to use a base. RAF Fairford was for those heavy bombers.
Right.
And eventually we let them use, in effect, their own base, because it's an American base, but Diego Garcia. But weirdly, we are the only one. I mean, Italy with Maloney, she refused. The Spanish refused. Everyone else refused. So weirdly, despite that relationship being so stretched because of awful leaders in the UK, yet it still remains there. And yet we always allow America to use it. Keir Starmer huffed and puffed, but eventually gave in. So we are a key ally. We are basically the only aircraft carrier for them in Europe, and they need that relationship. But it is, I don't think any of us realize the danger that Andy Burnham puts us and that relationship with the US into, and I don't think Americans get it yet.
No, they won't, but they'll start getting it, because I was reading the other day that apparently he's already turned down an invitation from the American embassy to go and celebrate July the 4th because of the things that he's heard Donald Trump say about him. And if he's going to be that petty and that sort of tetchy, because he was nicknamed Angry Burnham when he was up at Makerfield, because he doesn't like people criticising him. He can't stand it. That's why he doesn't like people asking him any questions. He's a typical lefty, can't handle anyone disagreeing with him.
No, and what Nob of the North was what you said. That's I haven't actually that genius phrase, but it's true. He is still up there in Manchester. I don't actually know if his record is any good in Manchester.
No, it's not.
And he says
it's
no,
not.
and he's going to send everyone up to Manchester. What, number 10 of the North? All these civil servants, well, they work from home, I guess, so it doesn't matter for them. They don't actually have to travel because they stay at home with their internet connection. But him trying to bring the North down the South, and of course not answering any questions, shows how weak he is. And we'll see the force that someone like Ed Miliband is behind him, who seemed to be a thorn in the side of Keir Starmer to threaten him. And of course, he wants to ramp up the green levies despite us literally sitting on oil in the North Sea. We ship it in from Qatar, which is a wonderful country. What could go wrong?
And Norway, where it's actually next door to where we could be getting it from, of our own volition, you know? Incredible.
Of course. But Norway did their sovereign wealth fund. They actually invested their money and we've squandered it. We could have been at the position. Norway having 2.2 trillion in their sovereign wealth fund, the largest in the world. And we could have been in that situation if we had held some of those, some of the profits from the oil and gas in the North Sea over. But it is a government that doesn't know what it's doing, that's going deeper and deeper in debt. And that defence review, I think, just sums up. We don't see our place in the world as at the top table. We see our place as a second-rate country that basically does what we're told to do, only having one ship that we could send to the Gulf region that broke down after 2 days. Literally, we are having to rely on other people to look after our interests. And it is going to come back and haunt us.
I know, absolutely right. Peter, listen, great to talk to you. So we must get you on some more because there's a lot more to discuss, I'm sure. When are you going over there again?
I was last over 5-6 weeks ago. And I was actually at the ARC conference talking to a lot of Americans last week. And they were just shaking their heads hearing the stupidity. They were angry about the aircon because we didn't have proper aircon. It seemed to be that aircon is not a thing in Europe ideologically, as opposed to not being hot. So they were intrigued and happy to mock Britain, and I get it. We've become a kicking ball.
We have become a laughing stock. It's absolutely incredible. Peter McIlvenna, thank you very much indeed. Hearts of Oak, check him out on online and on Twitter and stuff as well. Lots coming up after 10 o'clock, the Kelvin McKenzie Show. Right now, we're going to speak to Rosie Kay, who is an award-winning choreographer, director, and artistic director of K2CO, I think I'm right in saying. She's got a play out called Five Soldiers, which is based on embedding with the British Army 4th Battalion of Rifles. And she's putting it on at the Hereford Military History Festival. Actually, it's a film. Sorry, it's not a play, is it? Hereford Military History Festival. And we need to sell some tickets to it. So let's get going. Rosie, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Good to see you. Tell us a bit about what people will see if they see it.
So Five Soldiers started out as a dance production and it toured for quite a few years. And then we decided that we wanted to make it as a film. And there's something about dance when you're sitting there, you kind of take it all in, that was missing when you put it with film. So what we've done is we've combined the dance, which kind of is really beautiful and has storytelling, and it kind of portrays the 5 soldiers, with interviews with 5 veterans.
Right.
And they've all got quite extraordinary stories, ranging from a medic, a military policewoman, all the way to a retired general.
Okay.
So we've got a real sort of range of stories, and each one has a kind of incredible sort of twist at the end as well. So it's it's just under, it's like about 50-minute film.
Yeah.
And then in Hereford, we're going to be doing a post-show talk as well.
Okay, sounds great. And so how long is it running for, and where can people get tickets for it?
It's one afternoon it's on the 27th of September in Hereford.
Okay.
As part of Hereford Military Festival. And then the following week it will be at Chelsea History Festival. So we've got 2 outings. So I really hope people come and see it.
That'd be great. Have you ever worked with We Served at all? Do you know about We Served? It's an organisation for veterans.
No, I don't. Like with this show, I've worked a lot with Army Benevolent Fund,
Okay.
and I've done some help for heroes. But no, that We Serve, I'd love to get in touch
Okay,
with them.
well, I'll put them in touch with you because I'm actually an ambassador. I'm the only non-military ambassador for them. So I always pushing them. And what they do is they're a really, really interesting organisation where they we had them on all last week because it was Armed Forces Week. And, you know, they basically help to get veterans into work when they've left the service, and, you know, they're maybe struggling a little bit. They help them with you know, counselling if they need it. You know, it's all of that kind of stuff. So I think they've got quite a lot of members now. So it might be something that they could put on their website for you.
And I suppose like the kind of number one criticism we get is people kind of going, dance, that's got nothing to do with the military. And you think they're like the opposite end of the spectrum. But actually, there's a lot of similarity in that we're kind of very physical. We train very hard. We go on tour together. And actually, we get injured as part of our jobs.
Yeah.
So actually, there's a lot more that communicates with like the physicality, the discipline, the training, the relationships than people realise between dance and the military.
Right. Okay, brilliant. And is there a website they can go and buy tickets on or something like that?
Yeah, if you go visit the Courtyard Theatre in Hereford and look for 5 Soldiers, or I'm on X, I'm just at Rosie K2CO. So kind of follow me there and I'll share all the details with everybody.
Okay, and I'm just reading here that you were the choreographer for the Commonwealth Games ceremony, which is quite a little feather in your cap, isn't it?
Yes, it was. I quite like commanding 1,000 people to do what they're told.
Not an easy job, I would imagine.
It's a bit more military than you realise. Trying to get sort of 500 people from left to right and another 500 people from right to left.
I mean, how do you keep your eye on all of them to make sure they're all doing it right? I mean, that must be quite tough.
Well, do you know what they say? It's harder to choreograph like 5 people than it is 1,000. There's something about like masses of people do what they're told, whereas fewer people start arguing with you.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. And you were cancelled, I'm told, as well.
Yeah. I'm recovered from that though, but it was pretty traumatic. Yeah, I made the fatal mistake of saying that I believed in women's rights and that women are real.
Yeah, that's
so
always
you know
tricky,
what do you expect nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that was published yesterday when there was a picture of J.K. Rowling with Camilla, the Queen.
That's right. It was the Queen with Camilla.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people were saying. Yeah, but I mean, some of the vitriol about J.K. Rowling is so ridiculous, isn't it?
And I've been lucky enough to meet her through this horrible process, and it's been a real highlight. She's absolutely incredible woman, and I think she's so brave.
She's fantastic, isn't she?
Yeah,
brilliant. Well, listen, Rosie, I'll make sure that Charlotte gets in touch with the We Serve people, and we'll hook you guys up, and hopefully you'll get a load of people coming to see it. So it sounds wonderful. So thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers. Rosie K. Brilliant. 5 Soldiers. If you want to go and see it. I mean, Hereford's not a bad place to go and visit anyway. The Hereford Military Festival sounds great. But Hugh Andre is your man. Hugh might even be listening at the moment and watching. So if he is, we'll hook you guys up. Have we got time, Elena, to do a Pooch's Pooch? Have we got a Pooch's Pooch?
Yes, we do.
We do. Let's do it.
Really?
Get it off the couch.
Take it out.
I like your stick.
You go through, mate.
You actually.
No, a stick.
Marley, what do you think you're doing? No.
Come on.
That's brilliant. Ziggy used to do that. He used to get stuck with a stick. Absolutely extraordinary. A bit of breaking news just before we go. Victor Willis, Village People's songwriter who wrote YMCA, has died, according to the Facebook page of the group. And I think they say, I haven't actually said how old he is. I think he was in his 80s. Anyway, sad news for his family. We'll pass on our condolences. A couple of quick super chats, I think, before we go. One from Cindy. Mike, when you have weekend shows, can't get enough. I don't know what I'd do without your show. Thank you always, Cindy. Yeah, we're working on it. Working on all sorts of great plans for UK Live Online. Kelvin McKenzie coming up very shortly. This one from Jacques, who says, thought you might like to see this that I had made for Mike. I'd sent it off a couple of weeks ago, not realising he'd closed the PO box due to being inundated with things. So presumably it never arrived. That's great. That is very funny. Is that a sort of, is it made out of material?
Yeah.
It's like a knitted thing or something.
Yeah.
That looks great. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that we did have to close down our PR just because we were getting so much stuff and we'd literally have to have hired another studio to put it all in. And so we will at some point or other rejuvenate that, I'm sure, or we'll have somewhere that you can send it. But thank you all for watching. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. The winning poll is France to win the World Cup, not England, and not Dr. Congo. But don't forget, Mark Littlewood at 12. Kelvin McKenzie coming next at 10 o'clock. Get yourselves over to UK Live Online.
Why don't you relax and be a bit more MG? That would be a triumph.